across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good evening and welcome to the Evening Exchange. I'm Peter Cardwell. Loads happening today, day 41 of the war. Is there a ceasefire or is there not? Could there be a ceasefire as well between Israel and Hezbollah? Because negotiations are ongoing. We'll get the latest from Tel Aviv in a minute. Netanyahu saying Israel will strike Hezbollah wherever necessary as the Israeli military issued evacuation orders for parts of Beirut. Lebanon's health ministry says 300 people were killed, more than 1,000 wounded in yesterday's strikes. Sorry, Wednesday's strikes. Yes, yesterday's strikes. But there are so many different angles to this. We'll be in the Middle East in a minute. We'll talk about the defence of this country as well, especially as Russian ships have been in our waters. There's a lot, well, submarines have been in our waters. There's a lot to discuss about that as well. Also, away from the war, Keir Starmer, is he actually involved in any way? Is he all mouth and no trousers, as Kemi Badenoch says? Britain is now more divided than at any time since Brexit. Green Party voters are opposing some of that party's plans to reduce the speed limit on motorways. What do you think of 55-mile-an-hour limits? And rent controls are the way they think they're going to get Labour voters. We'll also talk about shoplifting. This has been a theme really for the last week or so. Lots of different angles to it. And now Labour has rejected calls for armed security guards to stop shoplifting. Big one on benefits too. Really interesting on this as well. There are lots of different big attractions, particularly around London, but places like Alton Towers as well. The kind of place that's a sacrifice to bring a family of four. £104, for example, to go to somewhere like the Tower of London. Well, if you are in benefits, you can get it for literally £4 or £5 for a family of four. There's huge discounts. What about the people who get up for work in the morning? Shouldn't they get a discount too? We'll talk about Dutch doctors who euthanised an autistic teen as well, and a big controversy about that. Loads to discuss between now and 10 o'clock. Get your call in, get your voice on the air. Whatever you want to say, however you want to say it. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute if you would, 0344 499 1000. You can send me a WhatsApp text message on that number too, or you can give me a ring on that number as well, 0344 499 1000. We'll hear what John Healey, the Defence Secretary, has to say. We'll hear what Keir Starmer had to say, and Netanyahu as well. Loads to discuss, but I want to hear, more importantly, not from these leaders, but from you and your opinion. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on the Evening Exchange. Dawn in Chelmsford is our first message of the evening and says, Peter, we are really fortunate to have a Prime Minister who is so knowledgeable about the Iran conflict. We certainly should erect a statue to Starmer when he finally leaves office, says Dawn. Dawn, I'm not sure you're being entirely serious there, because I've seen your messages in the past. Let's hear what John Healey has been saying, not necessarily about the Middle East, but about recent Russian activity in UK waters.
In the last few weeks, while the eyes of many were trained on the Middle East, the UK, in partnership with Norway and other allies, have responded to increased Russian activity in the Atlantic north of the UK. This operation involved a Russian Akula-class attack submarine and a concurrent deployment of 2 specialist submarines from Gugi. That's Russia's main directorate for deep-sea research. And last November, I outlined how these Gugi units, including the spy ship Yantar, are vessels directed by President Putin to conduct hybrid warfare activities against the UK and our allies, specifically around critical undersea infrastructure. And for the first time today, we're releasing images of the Gugi base and of these vessels. They're designed to survey underwater infrastructure during peacetime and sabotage it in conflict.
Well, John Healey had, I'm sure, this very intimidating message for President Putin.
And to President Putin, I say, we see you. We see your activity over our cables and our pipelines. And you should know that any attempt to damage them will not be tolerated and will have serious consequences.
I'm sure he's quaking in his boots. Keir Starmer says he's helped with the ceasefire in the Middle East as well. All of that's going on. And Benjamin Netanyahu has been chatting about his goals, especially when it comes to Hezbollah and what's happening in Lebanon, seeking direct negotiations with Lebanon. We'll hear more about that in a second, but let's just hear what Netanyahu's been saying.
And I'd like to stress, we still have some goals to accomplish, and we will achieve these goals either through agreement and consensus or through renewal of the war, because we are ready to do so whenever necessary. Our finger is on the trigger. As you all know, a temporary ceasefire came into effect tonight, a 2-week one between Iran and the U.S. in coordination with Israel. No, they did not surprise us at the last moment, and I would like to emphasize this is not the end of the campaign. It is merely a preparation on our way to achieve all of our goals.
Benjamin Netanyahu there, the Prime Minister of Israel, speaking through a translator, obviously, in case you think he's sounding a bit feminine. Yotam Confino is with me now, Middle East correspondent. He is in Israel. Yotam, can we get Yotam on the screen there? That's Sean Bell, who's coming up in a second. There's Yotam. There's the man I want to talk to just at this exact moment. Yotam, can you just bring us up to date and tell us about the attacks yesterday that killed over 200 people, and actually what we know about who's actually being killed? Are they civilians? Are they terrorists? Do we know?
It's a really good question, Peter, because the health ministry in Lebanon, very much like the health ministry in Gaza, does not distinguish between civilians and combatants, which is very odd because the health ministry, as far as I'm concerned, is not controlled by Hezbollah. So whenever there are numbers coming out of Lebanon, it's the same as Gaza. It's just a number, and that's all we have to go by. Sometimes Hezbollah, which actually quite often they do, they publish the names of those who were killed, but often they also don't, because they don't want the world to know exactly how many civilians were killed. On the Israeli side, it was being said that 200 of those killed yesterday were terrorists. In other words, we have an Israeli estimate, and then we have the Lebanese side, which is a complete blur. And I, for one, am really, really fed up with the fact that we just treat this as a normalcy. Lebanon is, yes, it's a failed state, but it's a state. It's not Gaza. You know, they have responsibilities. I don't understand why they don't publish the numbers or tell us how many civilians are killed compared to combatants. It's a hugely important point.
Of course it is, and hopefully that number will come down, perhaps even to zero. What do you make of what Netanyahu's saying? He wants direct negotiations with Lebanon. Is he going to get them, and what are the consequences going to be?
Look, he's got no choice, really. Donald Trump told him to stop the war against Hezbollah. I don't think it's going to stop completely in the coming days. That's not also what I was told. I don't think that this is really Israel stopping completely its attacks, because Hezbollah probably also won't. But we won't see as large-scale attacks as we saw yesterday, for example. What's going to happen really essentially is that Lebanese, Israeli, and American officials are going to meet in Washington next week. And there is a good chance that something is going to come out of it, mainly because the Lebanese government is quite desperate to end the war. And if Netanyahu can capitalize on this and somehow get them to strike a peace deal, that would be a huge turnaround, a significant achievement, and it would be a slap in the face to Iran, which is the whole reason why this war is even stopping, because Donald Trump told Netanyahu to halt the attacks against Hezbollah because the Iranians were threatening to blow up the ceasefire. Imagine if it ends up with Lebanon and Israel striking a peace deal, a historic peace deal. That would be a huge bump in the road for Iran, obviously. But from here on now, every day is obviously crucial. A lot can go wrong. But just the fact that Netanyahu is even initiating peace talks is a major turnaround in the war.
Yotam, thank you. That's Yotam Confino there, Middle East correspondent. Let's go to Sean Bell, defence analyst, a former Air Vice Marshal. Sean, thank you for joining us this evening. Is there actually a ceasefire, or is there not?
Well, if you take the literal, sorry, good evening, Peter. If you take it literally, you know, a ceasefire is a stop of hostilities, and it's pretty clear that is not the case at the moment. I mean, it's not just with Israel pounding away at Hezbollah. There's also reports, obviously, that Iran has been attacking Kuwait. There were 7 ballistic missiles going to the UAE, and that pipeline that carries oil across Saudi Arabia is also attacked. Inevitably, in the early days of these ceasefires, it takes a while for the dust to settle. I think we've got to wait and see 48 hours to see whether it actually holds or not.
Yes, certainly. And if, as Yoram says there is even negotiation, never mind a ceasefire or a deal with Lebanon, that could be a very, very significant step.
It could be. I think from the very start of this, I think you and I chatted before that we said at the start it was America and Israel sort of stepping in step to deal with Iran, and it was dealing with stopping Iran presenting a nuclear threat in the future and taking out its missile capability. But it feels like Israel sort of outsourced the bit about the uranium enrichment and the nuclear weapons, and has been pursuing its own agenda, largely in the West Bank, which we're not talking much about, but also against Hezbollah, feeling like a sort of once-in-a-lifetime opportunity under the cloak of this bigger campaign to try and make progress. I do think it was interesting that Netanyahu did the biggest single attack against Lebanon after the ceasefire was called. It does rather look like President Trump didn't actually coordinate it with Netanyahu.
Certainly they're not in lockstep anymore. They seem to have, I would argue, actually a disagreement about the importance of regime change as well. That's fallen way, way down the priorities list, it seems to me anyway, for Trump. Just tell us what's happening in the West Bank. If we're not talking about it enough, let's talk about it now. What is happening there, and why is it significant?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with talking about the West Bank is you get pilloried from all sides. The fact is that Israel, over many decades, in fact, since its foundation, has found itself beleaguered, under attack, and gradually it's been pushing out the settlements, contrary to what the United Nations has always said, illegal acts. But of course, generally under peacetime, we end up focusing the media attention on those sorts of things, whereas at the moment, President Trump is undoubtedly attracting most of the attention, particularly because the bizarre nature of the war in Iran, you've got an American superpower that seems incapable of stopping the Iranian influence, particularly around the Straits of Hormuz. So that understandably impacts us far more than the war in Israel impacts us.
Of course. Tell me about, talking about things that have an impact on us, tell us about these Russian submarines and your view on all of this, especially John Healey saying, Putin, we see you. I'm not sure Vladimir Putin is quaking in his boots.
I'd have to agree with you, Peter. I mean,
John Healey is quite scary. He looks quite a lot like Voldemort from the Harry Potter films, but I'm not sure that Vladimir Putin is really that scared by him.
No, but I've met John Healey a few times, and I have to say, take politics out of this, he does care. He's a very decent man.
I remember back in the day when I was a special advisor, he was the shadow housing secretary, and a very decent, very straightforward guy. Dealt with him quite a lot. I have a lot of time for John Healey, actually.
No, exactly. So let's look at the specifics. You know, what is interesting, this Akula-class submarine, nuclear submarine, acting as a sort of top cover for nefarious activity. Now, what the point is here, without getting into detail, Russia spends a fortune on its undersea capability. It has 64 submarines available. If you look at the Russian invasion of Ukraine, when I've been through Poland and Germany, they feel the heat of that. They're investing much more in their capability. But it isn't just at land that Russia presents a threat. It's also at sea. We've traditionally been a maritime nation in the UK. We have some capability. The P-8 aircraft has been chasing these submarines down. We've also got Type 23 frigates. But it's wafer thin. And when you look at the amount of submarines that Russia has, it goes back to your point. Can we present a reasonable deterrent? It's one thing seeing it. It's quite another doing something about it, and Russia has overwhelmingly more power. If we rely on our American colleagues, which so far we do, it's NATO first is our policy. But if you look at what's happening in the world at the moment, I wonder how many people believe that President Trump is serious about maintaining support for NATO.
Very, very interesting point, especially after he gave quite a dressing down to Mark Rutte, the head of NATO. I just wonder if I can ask you about Keir Starmer as well. I just want to play what the Prime Minister has been saying. He was in Saudi Arabia yesterday. Quite a number of people on the show last night taking umbrage with what he said about your analysis of it, Sean. Let's hear what the Prime Minister said yesterday.
Well, we've just reached this ceasefire, which is both welcome, and I think there'll be a sense of real relief. There certainly is across the region and for the United Kingdom. But there's work to do, and I'm here in Saudi Arabia and neighbouring countries now to carry out that work in support of what we're all seeking, which is that this ceasefire should be not a temporary ceasefire, but a permanent ceasefire.
What role, if any, does Keir Starmer actually have on the world stage now, in your estimation, Sean?
Well, I try to steer clear of politics, but what I will say is that there are two sides to this, one of which is, in my humble opinion, militarily, we were best to stay out of this war. It's not entirely clear what the legal justification was for it. President Trump going into Venezuela, plucking out Maduro, now going into another country and plucking them out. I think what the UK has done very well is to try and protect our Middle East partners. We've got a presence all across the region. Let's be clear, we have sold Typhoon jets, for example, to Qatar. We do a joint capability with them. And if you look at the profound changes in the UK threat environment, we don't have money, but we have severe shortages of military capability. The Middle East has money, but doesn't have the military capability. So therefore, what we're going to need to do is attract foreign investment if we are going to remotely get close to making sure this nation is defended. And I think the long term, this is a really powerful play. We protected some of the Middle East countries. We've been a key part of that when times were difficult. I think we may have the potential to reap that reward in the future.
Thank you for that, Sean Bell, our defence analyst and former Air Vice Marshal. Plenty of messages coming in as well. Dale says, great show as always. Thank you, Dale. He's there in Staining. I have one very simple question. What has our Prime Minister done for us since coming to power? Do you think he's out in the Middle East talking about breakfast clubs, perhaps? I mean, I know we slightly, breakfast clubs are important. I don't think any of us wants a child to go to school without breakfast in their tummy, although I did that for a long time because I didn't like having breakfast. But the point is that if that's the number one achievement of this government, well, then we're in difficulties. Martin in Lichfield says, good evening, Peter. Good evening, Martin. We can't stop a bunch of immigrants crossing the English Channel in a rubber dinghy. What's Healy, the Defence Secretary, going to do about a Russian warship? Use harsh language? I bet Putin is bricking himself. What a joke. Penny says, good evening, Peter. Trump does a lot of mad things, but a few good ones, like dealing with the migrant situation. Iran, like many evil regimes, needed taking out. They ordered women and children to stand around power plants and bridges, which America were likely to bomb. These regimes have to be got rid of, but I don't think anyone can claim victory yet. Israel are world leaders in finding cures for dementia and Alzheimer's. They must always be protected, says Penny in Essex. Yeah, you're absolutely right. On some of the incredible... I was actually interviewing a guy, Penny, a few months ago. Maybe you saw the interview. A professor at a university hospital in Israel, and he was pioneering there in the early stages. Was pioneering this unbelievable cancer treatment. So at the moment, people who get cancer, as many people will know, there are many people watching and listening who've very sadly been through it. Chemotherapy, for example, radiotherapy, it kills good cells and bad cells. But this was a sort of smart bomb technology to go in and only kill the cancerous cells. It's in early stages of development, but it was a fascinating interview. And there are incredible things that have come out of Israel. And I always say to people who say boycott Israel, well, that's fine. Give me your mobile phone, because every single smartphone in this country has Israeli technology in it. Sam says the Akula Russian submarine is a nuclear-powered first strike weapon, and Starmer is out job hunting for the UN. A total card, says Sam in Barnsley. We're going to go to the debate desk. Claire Muldoon and Leo Watson will be with us tonight. What do you think about all these stories? 0344 499 1000. And the exiled Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, he's the person that a lot of people want to come back as the leader. He has slammed Keir Starmer on Twitter, saying the Prime Minister failed to act to stop Tehran's massacre of 40,000 innocent civilians in January. He says Starmer should follow in the footsteps of Churchill, not Chamberlain. He should support the Iranian people's fight for liberty. I'll find out what Claire and Leo think about that, and maybe what you do as well. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right then, let's go to the debate desk. Claire Muldoon is with me, the broadcaster and journalist. Lovely to see you. How are you doing?
You too, Peter. I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
Bit discombobulated, different day, beginning with tea, but there we go.
There we are. And Leo Watson's here, political strategist.
Thanks for
Lovely to see you. You well?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Good, good. Let's talk about the Russian submarines in our waters. This is what John Healey, the Defence Secretary, has been saying about them.
In the last few weeks, while the eyes of many were trained on the Middle East, the UK, in partnership with Norway and other allies, have responded to increased Russian activity in the Atlantic north of the UK. This operation involved a Russian Akula-class attack submarine and a concurrent deployment of 2 specialist submarines from Gugi. That's Russia's main directorate for deep-sea research. And last November I outlined how these Gugi units, including the spy ship Yantar, are vessels directed by President Putin to conduct hybrid warfare activities against the UK and our allies, specifically around critical undersea infrastructure. And for the first time today, we're releasing images of the Gugi base and of these vessels. They're designed to survey underwater infrastructure during peacetime and sabotage it in conflict.
John Healey also had this message for Vladimir Putin.
And to President Putin I say, we see you. We see your activity over our cables and our pipelines, and you should know that any attempt to damage them will not be tolerated and will have serious consequences.
Serious consequences, Claire?
Serious consequences from the Defence Secretary, I believe, that we have. I believe his name is Mr. John Healey. I think he's been missing in action. Is that not a defence term? Where has he been? He's been in the Gulf Straits, hasn't he? He flew off there 2 weeks ago, just before Easter. What is he doing? Because Starmer, don't forget, has stopped the Iran war.
That's right, single-handedly.
Single-handedly, he's taking credit for that. You would have thought our Defence Secretary might have had something to do with that. And as for these Russian boats, I mean, they're coming in and they're hiding under different flags, don't forget, as well. Putin is just looking at us all in Europe and geographical Europe and Britain and thinking, yeah, what are you going to do, really?
Do you think Putin's quacking in his boots when he's threatened by John Healey?
Not especially, but, you know, what's our alternative? Like, what are we supposed to do about those Russian subs other than monitor them, other than take the most restrained action? I think that's what a sensible nation does. We're not the US, we're not thugs, we're not bullies.
You think the US are thugs and bullies?
Oh, absolutely.
Why?
I mean,
why do you think that?
Have you seen the news, Peter?
I have seen the news, and I'm asking you why you think that. Who are they bullying? Who are they thugs towards? Iran?
I think to anyone they deal with. I mean, to the United Kingdom. They're no ally of the United Kingdom. I mean, they bully, they threaten, they cajole, they humiliate, and they do it to all their European partners too. Anyone who dare say that they disagree with them even slightly, that's what a bully does, no?
So what should we do? What should our relationship be towards America, Leo?
I think we have to fight power with power, and I think that's what we've done. I think Keir Starmer has played an absolute blinder. I think it's one of these rare occasions where actually he's done something that's popular with the public, but is also the right thing morally and the right thing in a policy sense to do. And I think we have to keep being strong like that. I think if this was Nigel Farage playing the big man and turning down the superpowers, I think you guys would all be jumping up and down and singing hallelujah. So.
Well, I'm certainly not a defender of Nigel Farage.
Nor am I.
Let's see what Starmer has actually been saying about his role. This is him speaking yesterday in Saudi Arabia.
Well, we've just reached this ceasefire, which is both welcome, and I think there'll be a sense of real relief. There certainly is across the region and for the United Kingdom. But there's work to do, and I'm here in Saudi Arabia and neighbouring countries now to carry out that work in support of what we're all seeking, which is that this ceasefire should be not a temporary ceasefire, but a permanent ceasefire.
International statesman Keir Starmer?
Yeah, hasn't he just got it all, hasn't he? I mean, young kids are for book character day are going to go as the Prime Minister of the UK next March.
Have they
not? Has
he actually got a point in that if he is someone who is a leader of a G7 nation, who has not been involved, which has not been materially involved in this, obviously we've done some defensive actions, could he actually be someone who can help with the Middle East, G them up with Islamabad and get a fully functional peace deal here?
No. In a word, no. But I do think that Britain still has to have its place. I mean, we have been exposed dramatically in our defences.
As we were always going to be.
I mean, our welfare bill is currently 5 times the amount of our spending on defence. HMS Dragon that we sent in to help out, don't forget, has had to do a U-turn and come back and be fixed, for heaven's sake. It's almost as if the Scottish CalMac companies are running the ferries. That's what more or less it's like. You can akin it to that. And we've also left our own defences completely and utterly vacant in our capacity to guarantee our own domestic energy. But also, Iran has shown they've got this, they can attack with missiles. Where is our defence strategy to support our own defence of our own nation? We know those missiles can reach 2,000.
I was speaking to someone recently who was an advisor to Gordon Brown, who said what Gordon Brown often did, he wasn't blaming Gordon Brown, he wasn't blaming the Conservatives, he wasn't blaming Keir Starmer, John Healey or anybody, he was sort of blaming them all and saying what happened was with Afghanistan and Iraq, Gordon Brown would give the money to the things that needed to be done, but then take the money away from the sort of maintenance things. I wonder, Leo, if I can put a point to you, which has just come out in the last few minutes from the exiled Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, the Shah's son, who slammed Keir Starmer on Twitter, saying the Prime Minister failed to act to stop Tehran's massacre of 40,000 innocent Iranians in January. He says Starmer should follow in the footsteps of Churchill, not Chamberlain. He should support the Iranians' people, fight for liberty.
The man who's in Trump's pocket is using Trump's lines. It's as simple as that, really.
But, I mean, it's more than that,
is it not? Does he not have a point?
But it's more than that, in that, do you think, I don't think, my position on this has shifted over the past 41 days. I am for this action if it brings regime change, but I don't think Trump cares about regime change. I think the Israelis care about regime change. Do you think Starmer cares about regime change?
No, I don't. If I was guessing, but I can't look into his soul. But for what it's worth, I've been consistent throughout the entire 41-day period, which is I would love to see regime change. I don't think any true Democrat, any true Brit would love anything else. But there's no credible plan for that. It was never going to happen. It's not on Trump's radar. So you can't support this action.
Removal of the nuclear weapons. Do you want Iran to have nuclear weapons?
I mean, I think without removal of the regime, they're just going to rebuild it. They're going to come back stronger. They're going to come back with more of an axe to grind. I think it's just.
So what about the Iranian people? There's 90 million people in Iran that are, still hanging people from cranes.
And Leo, in fairness, has said that he doesn't want that to happen. He wants regime change. The point is, Can we get regime change, or is that just a complete pipe dream? Is there any way that that can happen, apart from the Iranian people rising up, but then they're so brutally repressed?
And also, I think if you just bombed them from 30,000 feet and bombed them into the Stone Ages, as Trump likes to say, it tries to end their civilization, I don't think that's going to get the middle classes and the
but
people
he didn't end their civilization, though, did he? He threatened it and then didn't do it.
He still bombed them to high heaven. I don't think that... You think for a revolution to happen, for people to rise up, you've got to convert the average Joe who goes to work every day and does the right things, does the normal things. You've got to make those people want to rebel against the regime, give them something to fight for. I don't think they want to. Don't think they want to come after, back Trump and say and come all out.
But
and say,
there are many Iranian people who are asking for it to be. Well, I don't think it is a nonsense, because there are many Iranian people who wanted the bombs to come in the first place. And when you're in a situation where you're asking a foreign power to bomb your own country, that is a serious desperation. You've also got 40,000. Hold on a second.
Sorry.
You've also got the 40,000 innocent Iranians who were murdered by the regime. Those were people who said, "This is enough. This is too far. We are going out on the streets," knowing, many of them will have known what the consequence will have been, Leo.
And unfortunately, that is still the few who went out on the streets. And I think to revolutionise a whole population, you have to be smarter. There is no game plan, and we were never going to go put boots on the ground and put a legitimate plan for regime change in, so why the hell would they go out on the streets and risk their lives again?
Claire, is there a ceasefire as we speak right now at this moment in your view, and what do you think should happen now?
Right, so the truth of the matter is no one knows if there is, because this is such a changing game of facts from hour to hour, day to day, week to week. It changes constantly since the February of the 28th when it started. I don't think there is a ceasefire, because I think the backtrack of J.D. Vance, in my view, was a backtrack for him to come out yesterday and say, well, Lebanon wasn't on the table, and yet the Iranians thought it was, in terms of the peace plan that was actually made. That's part of the issue. There doesn't seem to be any clear and concise comms coming out. In fact, one of the biggest losers in wars is often the truth.
First casualty of war.
Yeah, exactly. And I, for one, would prefer to have people on the ground not fighting but giving us facts, and with the absence of that, because it's not allowed under the Iranian regime, then I'm afraid it's like...
Well, it's very difficult to know exactly what's going on.
To know what's going on.
We'll come back to Claire and Leo in just a second. Let me just read out a few messages, including from Elliot, who says, "We see you in our waters, Putin. If you're not careful, there will be serious consequences. We will set sail as soon as our boat is ready, and although we will give you a 2-week head start, there will be consequences." Joanna in Salisbury says, "Hi, Cardi P." Hi, Joanna. "Russian vessels in UK waters are up 30% in 2 years. They either see us as an easy target, or free breakfast clubs have reached the Russian ship's crews." So that's sarcastic remarks today. You know the difference between the person who makes a sarcastic remark and the person who doesn't get it. It's called the sarcasm. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'll come to that in a second. Sorry, we were just chatting about the stories we're about to talk about. Tony in Torquay says, "Why is our Prime Minister so weak? We need a strong leader at this time, and all we have is a complete idiot." Dan in Kent says, "Evening, Cardi P." Evening, Dan. "We are getting more and more divided since Brexit, because politicians are letting us down with failure after failure. Brexit, COVID, the NHS, national security, illegal migration, the list goes on." Well, we'll talk about that right now, actually. But can I just say to the top team behind the glass, I'm not sure that Claire has the information about the euthanasia story. If we just print that out and bring it into her, I'll get her opinion on that in a second. But let's talk about Brexit. Well, we're more divided now than at any time since Brexit. Is that a shock to you, Leo?
No, sadly not. I think.
Why is it happening?
I think social media's got a big part to play in it. I think it has empowered certain people whose voices weren't perhaps so prevalent in British debate. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing or a good thing, but it has shown us that we're more divided than ever before. I think perhaps maybe we're not actually more divided, but we just realise how divided we are now with the increase in social media.
Claire?
I think globally everyone is more divided. People don't seem to recognise their neighbours at all, notwithstanding obviously Brexit happened, etc, etc. But I think in this country it's not one thing or the other. It's not 50% against 50%. It's often in a lot of different issues, like assisted dying, like speed limits on the motorway, like the war in Iran. There seems to be unifying quite a lot of people actually against the war in Iran. Independence again in Scotland, you know, there's so much anger.
Is it because we've had so many referenda and people are saying this side and the one side versus the other? Is that part of these kind of binary choices?
I think so, because everywhere you go, even in the Daily Mail online, you know, I think it's everyone's guilty secret at the moment, there'll be polls, you know, what do you think? On X.
I like it that we've democratised opinion, certainly, but what I find quite weird is that people have opinions on everything. I mean,
but they don't debate them.
Yes.
They don't take them down the pub and thrash it out. You don't even tertiary education providers. They are so woke at the moment. They do not have the ability to go to tutorials and tease out the minutiae of.
And the point of a university education is to make you think.
To exactly
do that. Is to allow you to think.
But you can't do that in work anymore. Never mind tertiary education. I mean, you have to toe the party line, whatever that party line might be. The wokest line is the one that holds. If you have an opinion against it, you keep your gob shut.
Yes.
You get in trouble.
Yeah.
And what kind of society is that?
Especially under Angela Rayner's new rules, new employment rules.
Oh, don't go after Ange. Come on, let's play fair. Let's play.
Don't go after Ange.
Yeah.
What, the person who broke the law?
Ange. Don't go after Ange.
Well, if you want to express your opinions in the workplace, come and work here.
And you just can't at all.
Let me tell you, if there was a live feed of that newsroom, I think the ratings would be even better than our record VHRs last time. Did I mention that? So let's talk about a very interesting political party. We talked about Labour. We talked a little tiny bit about the Conservatives. Let's talk about the Green Party, because they're in hot water over Zach Polanski's plans to reduce the speed limit.
Hot.
Well, indeed, yes, yeah. A heat pump has made it warm. Zach Polanski's plans to reduce the speed limit of Britain's motorways to 55 miles an hour. He's also talked about rent controls. What are your thoughts, Leo?
Oh, one idiot.
Don't use my lines.
I mean, to be fair, this is the guy who gets up and starts singing songs about how much he loves Nick Clegg at the Liberal Democrat conference 10 years ago. The guy's a social climber. He's an opportunist. He doesn't believe in anything. I can't stand the bloke.
Claire?
Ditto.
Okay.
It's a shame.
Well, no, it's not, let's talk about the points that you made about reducing the motorway speed limit to 55 from 70. Half of his own party don't even want that.
Yeah.
And he will say it's for better fuel economy, better road safety. When it's not, all you have to do is take a trip down the displaced traffic from all the LTNs onto the main arterial routes into London. What are you in? You're in a car park. You can't move anyway. And to have these, it's a cash machine for me.
Yeah.
And it will only enrage drivers. And it'll build cash for local authorities.
Let's take it the other way. I mean, I think we should be having an autobahn situation,
just like in Germany.
And I think we should. I think if Keir Starmer wants to win some votes back, which I strongly advise he does, and particularly when we go to the polls on May the 7th, let's just have a 40 mile an hour speed limit across the United Kingdom on our residential roads. I'd be up for that. I'd vote for that. I think most of the country would.
But the interesting thing, Leo, is that no matter what people think of what the three of us think of the Green Party, and I don't think any of us is necessarily in favour. Also, I think there's these bonkers policies like legalising all drugs. You're going to legalise date rape drugs? Seriously. The Green Party are doing very, very, very well, and maybe that ties in with what we're talking about a second ago. Oh, sorry, Melania Trump is speaking right now. Can we take Melania Trump? Can we go to this? No, we can't. But I'm telling you that she's speaking now. She says she never had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, but the links to him are defaming her reputation. So she is talking about that. We'll no doubt bring you more on that in a minute. But just to go back to my point, which is about the Green Party, we have this very divided politics, where the #1 party consistently in polls is Reform UK. Second now in many polls, not all polls, but many polls, is the Green Party. Those are kind of extremes of the left and right. Some would argue, I'm not saying anybody's, I'm not saying Reform UK are far right. I don't think that's true at all. But Leo, that's clearly happening here, and despite some of these policies that may not be necessarily that popular, we're in a situation where Zach Polanski is more popular than you would like him to be.
Well, I think it's people don't realise how much of a charlatan he is. I mean, let's get that Lib Dem video out. It's the most atrocious thing you've ever seen.
The one I find most interesting is when he went for the London Assembly and said, "Vote for me as a vote for Israel."
Yeah.
Don't think he's saying that now.
Yeah, or when he was growing women's breasts by hypnotherapy. I mean,
he's never going to get over that. He's never going to get over that.
Well, in today's politics, you just don't know. People get over the most ridiculous stuff. So I think it speaks to what we were talking about earlier. Britain is a divided country. We're looking for extremes. We're looking for stupidity. And yeah, I think well, if the polls are correct, we're going to get it.
Okay. Melania Trump, I'm told, only spoke very briefly, so by the time we would have gone to it, she would have finished. So clips are on the way of that. We'll bring you what Melania Trump says, but the key thing is that she said she never had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Links to him are defaming her reputation. We're going to talk about another big issue that you've been talking about a lot, especially over the last week or so. Isabel Oakeshott, our international editor, has been looking into shoplifting. We're going to look at her investigation in a second, and we'll get some reaction as well from Leo and from Claire. So stay with us here on the debate desk on the Evening Exchange on Talk. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to get your call in to react to what Claire and Leo are saying. Stay with us.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Richard. He says, "Hi Cardi P, just want to remind everyone that Russia has a nice little build-up of troops on the border with Ukraine, telling the world there was nothing in it just before they invaded. Well, that'll help me sleep well tonight." Chris in Northumberland says, "Peter, the more Starmer trots on about the world stage, the more our vulnerability as a nation is advertised. He's the poster boy for flaccid weakness." There's a mental image. Right then, let's talk a little bit about euthanasia, because there's this very concerning story about what's happening in the Netherlands, and someone who has a lifetime autism who has been euthanized. Claire, just tell us a little bit about this.
Right, so this was a young lad between the ages of 16 and 18, and he was diagnosed with autism. He was clearly on the spectrum that was diagnosed, but he was experiencing a lot of emotion in that he felt he was very much alone, he was isolated, etc, etc, etc. These are symptoms of being on the spectrum.
They can be, yeah, absolutely.
For certain autistic diagnosis. But he was actually offered to be killed legally in the Netherlands. And this is part of the reason why, when this debate started coming into this country, I cited the laws both in Canada and the Netherlands. And look what happened a month ago in Spain to that poor girl that was raped, was brought up in foster home. She was raped, she was depressed, she couldn't feel as if she could go on. The only way she could go on was through being euthanised in Spain. There was a last-minute attempt to try and save the girl, but the doctor said no, because we've already promised her vitals, her organs, for donation. Now, back to this boy, though. This is a slippery, slippery slope of what I've been saying will happen in this country under Faulkner's Law, and it must not happen at all.
A viewer actually sent me this, and if you see stories you think we should be covering, do send it through. Of one tomorrow, we're going to talk about Ireland and what's happening there with the petrol blockades and so on. Someone sent me today. We're going to hopefully do that tomorrow night. Actually, I love it when people send me in stories, because I can't see everything and our production team can't see everything. And this is, I think, a really important story. It's from the Netherlands. The article the person sent me was Canadian coverage of it. Leo, your thoughts on this?
Well, it's just terrifying. Not all that much to add, to be honest. I think it is a slippery slope. I think the assisted dying bill is exactly the same thing. This country is not prepared for this kind of stuff, and we're running in. I feel like a politician, I've backed Keir Starmer earlier today, so I'll be even-handed. So Keir Starmer could have a legacy. He wants his thing, the equal rights for gay marriage. He wants his Cameroonian moment, like, oh, I brought in the assisted dying bill. And I think, what a disgrace that is. What a disgrace to try and push that through as a private member's bill and not have the courage to say, put it in your manifesto or anything like that. It bewilders me, the whole thing.
To think about the other side, right? There's a very vocal, famous person leading this charge, that in Dame Esther Ranson. Now, under the bill, as proposed, all it takes is a 6-month diagnosis for a terminal illness. Dame Esther Ranson had that 6-month diagnosis of terminal illness back to death 18 months ago. By the time she's even said this admittedly, she's admitted it on air, and she said this law would never come into effect to help me.
To play the other side, I mean, I think we've all seen relatives and friends go through
I certainly have.
enormous pain.
They shouldn't be in pain.
But palliative care needs to be much better in this country.
Sometimes, though, you wouldn't treat a dog. I see it. You wouldn't treat a dog the way you treat.
Well, it's really interesting, actually, because I have two good friends, both of whose mothers have died of cancer, and both of them are 100% for assisted dying. If you have any thoughts on this, let us know. 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk about shoplifting now. We've talked a load about this in the last week or so. We had Richard Walker, the head of Iceland, saying that he wanted people to be armed, to have batons, essentially, guards in different supermarkets. Isabel Oakeshott, our international editor, has been looking into this in some depth. This is what she's come up with.
Over the past 24 hours, I conducted a shoplifting experiment. I went into Tesco, Aldi, Sainsbury's, Marks & Spencer and Waitrose. Now, I conducted this experiment in light of the security guard from Waitrose who was sacked after stopping a shoplifter. I took items off the shelf, I put them into my rucksack, I put my rucksack on my back and I walked straight out the front door. I just want to add that we never planned to permanently steal anything, and we did actually leave a letter inside the shop, which was placed very obviously, and recorded ourselves putting it there with a £10 note inside, explaining what we were doing, just in case things got a little bit heated. So in front of me is Waitrose, and I'm about to head in there and see what happens. So that was Waitrose, first supermarket. I literally openly put the stuff in my bag, barbecue sauce, rice, soy sauce and a tin of kidney beans. I put it into my bag, I nervously walked to the front door, I walked straight out the front door and away we go. So mate, just let you know, I am recording. I've just done a social experiment, so I'm not nicking this stuff, but I've put it in my bag. I'm going to put it back. I've left 10 quid on the shelf over there just in case I got caught, but I didn't get caught. So yeah, okay. I'm just going to put it back, yeah? Cheers, mate. Barbecue sauce. All right, just let you know, I've got nothing in my bag. I did walk out of the shop with stuff in my bag. It's part of an experiment that I was doing.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. But I just thought I'd be honest with you and let you know. Take care. Thanks. Cheers. Okay, here we go. Sainsbury's, shoplift number 2. Got to try and be a bit more obvious this time. I've got my tenner that I'm going to leave in the shop. Sainsbury's, done. I took some fruit juice, milk and pigs in blankets. And I slid underneath the barrier thinking that might sort of attract a bit of attention. I walked out the front door, I waited, and sure enough, nothing happened. Shoplift number 2 done. Time to put everything back. And away we go. Here goes, backpack on. Ready to go into Tesco. Tesco, third time lucky. I took some cereal bars. I took a few other bits and bobs from that same aisle, and I walked straight out the front door, straight through the barrier, past the security guard, and I wasn't stopped again. I did, however, go back in to speak to this security guard. Hi mate, I'm just letting you know, I'm just basically doing a social experiment. So I've just nicked a load of stuff. I'm going to go and put it back now, yeah?
Why are you doing that?
Just a social experiment, mate. You know, in light of what's happened, I've left some money in the shop on the shelf. So I'm just going to go and put the stuff back now, yeah? Yeah?
I don't know what kind of social experience is it.
Well, it's in light of what's happened at Waitrose, you know, the guy being sacked for stopping the guy nicking the stuff. So the guy's been sacked. So basically I've just taken that stuff under the value of a tenner. I've left a tenner in the shop in an envelope, and now I'm just going to go and put it back.
Where's the put?
I'll show you. So I'll put the envelope there with the money in, yeah?
All right.
And now I'll put the stuff back.
All right.
Yeah? Okay, cheers mate. He just said it's almost impossible to stop. He said even when we do catch them, we can't call the police because the police don't do anything. It's absolutely pointless. The police don't even turn up. Marks and Spencer, fourth time lucky. And yeah, I wasn't stopped again. I went down a few aisles. I took some chocolate biscuits. I put them in my bag. I walked through the tills and straight out the front door, and nobody stopped me. When I did go and tell the security guard what I'd done, he was very concerned, and he did actually take a picture of the letter that I'd left in, but he was very understanding about what I was doing, because I did take time, as I did with the other 3, to explain what I was doing and why I was doing it. Hi mate, it's a social experiment in light of what happened in Waitrose, so I'm just letting you know I have left a tenner in the shop. Okay. I'm just going to go and put the stuff back that I've just nicked.
Okay.
Yeah, nice one. I'll put it all back, mate, yeah?
Did you nick the food?
Yeah, so I nicked it all. I nicked some food then and walked out the shop.
When?
And nobody stopped me.
When?
Just now. You can open it if you want. I left that in the shop. So there's a letter to say what I'm doing and £10 notes to cover what I nicked, but now I'll put the stuff back.
I was on my route here. So if we know someone is stealing, yeah?
Yeah.
First of all, we have to confirm.
Confirm.
Someone is proper shoplifter, yeah?
Yeah.
So when he went out here,
yeah.
I stopped at the door.
Aldi, here goes. Aldi, well, same again. I walked in, I took some squash, some fruit, 3 bottles of fruit juice, right by the tills. I walked through the tills, out the front door, and I wasn't stopped again. I did walk back in, and the shop staff didn't seem too happy with me in this situation, despite me trying to explain what I was doing and why I was doing it.
Lucy Wing, Crime Policy Advisor at the British Retail Consortium, said,
Confronting a shoplifter is a major trigger for violence against store workers. Colleagues are trained on how to de-escalate the situation without putting themselves in harm's way. Retailers welcome the imminent passage of the Crime and Policing Bill, which will strengthen action against offenders, including making assaulting a retail worker a standalone offence and removing the £200 threshold for investigating theft. It is vital the police respond to every reported incident to visibly demonstrate to offenders that all types of retail crime will not be tolerated.
Aldi and Sainsbury's said they were aligned to the British Retail Consortium's statement.
A Waitrose spokesperson said, "There is a serious danger to life in tackling shoplifters. We refuse to put anyone's life at risk, and that's why we have policies in place that are very clearly understood and must be strictly followed. As a responsible employer, we never want to be in a position where we're notifying families of a tragedy because someone tried to stop a theft. Nothing we sell is worth risking lives for."
A Marks & Spencer spokesperson said the safety of our colleagues must always come first. All our security colleagues receive extensive training when it comes to dealing with retail crime, and the focus is very much on deterring crime rather than detaining. We would never want a colleague to put themselves at risk. At M&S, we invest tens of millions of pounds each year to protect our colleagues and our stores.
Tesco did not respond to a request for comment.
Well, that was a report by Christian Drogan working with Isabel Oakeshott there. Lots in that. Leo, what's your reaction to those shocking scenes? You just go into these big supermarkets and just take things.
Lots to unpack.
Yeah.
Lots to unpack. Okay, Claire.
I mean,
all right.
You're not,
I see you.
That aside, I mean, you can't. Security guards aren't paid enough money to get involved in this kind of thing. I think the police have got a lot to answer for. I think the Conservative government of the previous 15 years have got a lot to answer for completely defunding the police, putting everyone at threat, and it's the same really with the military as well. Like, you know, what do we expect? I think if we're going to have some rules in our society, if we're going to bring our society back together, let's get the bloody rule of order back in order.
You know, supermarkets can actually take part of the blame. I've got a bit of a theory here. I think the minute they started going to self-service checkouts, right, everyone thought, OK, that's fine, maybe just add something in, maybe not scan it. And it's that mindset. There's a big internet company beginning with A, ending in N. They've got fresh food shops around the country. You don't even need to scan anything. They recognise you and they know what you've got from your app. Even companies like was shown in the video, Waitrose and Sainsbury's have got their own your own ability to actually scan your own stuff as you go. So bring back people at the tills, you see.
I don't know if this is true. I shop in Lidl every now and again, but the one I go into doesn't have self-checkouts. And I know there's some Lidls where you actually have a route that you must take through. You can't just go between the different things. That, to me, makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. It's a big...
It's a big issue. It's a big issue. We know there's a big issue. I don't think we needed that lengthy report to show us the issue. We've had a guy sacked from Waitrose.
Yeah, that's right.
That's offered a job from...
We talked about him earlier. Listen, thank you to Claire Muldoon and indeed to Leo Watson on the debate desk. Claire is a broadcaster and journalist and Leo is a political strategist. Also to Debbie, he says, well done Christian, he's bonkers but brave. This is the state of our supermarkets and needs to be addressed, sorted and stopped, says Debbie. So thank you very much indeed for that. We're going to talk about lawless Britain more and what our armed security guards should be doing. Also, Angela Rippon has been the victim of 2 muggings in London as well. We'll talk all about that with Roy Ram, who's former commander of Specialist Operations at New Scotland Yard. Get your thoughts on it too. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you so much to everybody who's been in touch. Loads of voice notes, texts, tweets and calls coming in. We're talking in just a second about lawless Britain, Labour rejecting calls for armed security guards to stop shoplifting. What do you think should happen after perhaps watching or listening to that big report that we had from Christian Drogan and Isabel Oakeshott a minute ago? Also, Angela Rippon, the TV presenter, says she's been the victim of 2 muggings in London, which saw her kicked in the head, threatened with broken fingers if she didn't hand over jewellery. We're talking about Starmer as well, and Iran, the Middle East, and of course those submarines in British waters too. This hour too, we'll talk about benefits treats, how Britain became a freeloaders paradise. So many people on benefits who are getting huge discounts at very expensive visitor attractions. Those people who go out to work every day, well, they have to pay the full whack, over £100 for a family of 4 for some of them. We'll also reflect on Dutch doctors euthanizing an autistic teen, and migration, as well as what Melania Trump, the First Lady of the United States, has been saying in just a moment. So much to discuss, so many ways of discussing it. 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp text message on 0344 499 1000, the same number to send a WhatsApp voice note. Less than a minute, please. We'll play one of those in a second from Anna. And you can also give me a ring, of course, on the main number. We'll take some calls this hour, 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss between now and 10 o'clock here on the Evening Exchange. Stay with us. I just want to bring you the clip from the White House. Melania Trump, the First Lady of the United States, just spoke in a surprise address at the White House. She criticised what she called lies which have been circulating, linking her to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, insisting she never had a relationship with him. This is what Melania Trump has been saying.
The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. The individuals lying about me are devoid of ethical standards, humility, and respect. I do not object to their ignorance, but rather I reject their mean-spirited attempts to defame my reputation. I never been friends with Epstein. Donald and I were invited to the same parties as Epstein from time to time, since overlapping in social circles is common in New York City and Palm Beach. I am not Epstein's victim. Epstein did not introduce me to Donald Trump. I met my husband by chance at a New York City party.
So Melania Trump talking there. I will have some reaction to that. Maybe you want to react to it. 0344 499 1000. I want to talk about Lawless Britain in just a second with Roy Ram, who's a former commander of Specialist Operations at New Scotland Yard. But the main story we're talking about tonight is what's happening in Iran, and not just there, but also those Russian submarines that have been encircling the UK. Let's just see what John Healey, the Defence Secretary, has been saying about that today at Downing Street.
In the last few weeks, while the eyes of many were trained on the Middle East, the UK, in partnership with Norway and other allies, have responded to increased Russian activity in the Atlantic north of the UK. This operation involved a Russian Akula-class attack submarine and a concurrent deployment of 2 specialist submarines from Gugi. That's Russia's main directorate for deep-sea research. And last November I outlined how these Gugi units, including the spy ship Yantar, are vessels directed by President Putin to conduct hybrid warfare activities against the UK and our allies, specifically around critical undersea infrastructure. And for the first time today, we're releasing images of the Gugi base and of these vessels. They're designed to survey underwater infrastructure during peacetime and sabotage it in conflict.
John Healey also had a message for Vladimir Putin.
And to President Putin I say, we see you, we see your activity over our cables and our pipelines, and you should know that any attempt to damage them will not be tolerated and will have serious consequences.
Mary in County Down has been in touch and says nobody with half a brain believes Putin is trying to cut our undersea cables or blow up our gas pipelines. The government is desperately spinning non-existent threats to give the impression we're tough on defence and protecting Britain. If the government wanted to protect Britain, it would stop letting in enemies of the state and would back all efforts to destroy the murderous Iranian regime that has proved it has the capacity and the will to bomb us. Lots more on that coming. We'll discuss that in greater depth. But I want to talk now about the internal affairs, the lawless Britain, Labour rejecting calls for armed security guards to stop shoplifting. This was Richard Walker, who is Lord Walker, who is the chief executive of Iceland, for example. He actually offered a job to the worker in Waitrose who was sacked for confronting a shoplifter after 17 years of exemplary service. There are other stories around about a murder in Primrose Hill, absolutely dreadful. The victim's father's been speaking out. And Angela Rippon, the TV presenter, she's 81. She says she's been the victim of 2 muggings in London, which saw her kicked in the head and threatened with broken fingers if she didn't hand over jewellery. Roy Ram is with me, former commander of Specialist Operations at New Scotland Yard. Roy, let's start with shoplifting. What do you think should happen? How do we get a grip on this?
Well, it is hugely difficult, and I listen with great interest to your previous speakers. I do think that the supermarket's got a part to play here. It's too easy to walk in and take stuff, but you know, in a sense, what's happened here is that there are no consequences for too many crimes. The chances of being arrested because we've got not enough police officers, we've not got a court system which is agile and quick enough to deal with it. You know, I once worked at Marylebone Police Station that looked after Oxford Street, and there were store detectives in Oxford Street who regularly, in the big stores like Selfridges and Marks and Spencers, brought in shoplifters. They were dealt with immediately, and they went to court the next day, and they were either fined, sentenced to prison, or very often they were foreigners and they were deported immediately. The difficulty now is that everything seems to take so long. If you can get a copper there in time, getting somebody to court, it's a mission. It's years away. So I think that I think actually arming store detectives is a recipe for danger. But where I do think there could be further thought given is stores funding PCSOs, police support officers, to be in those stores instead of stored.
As far as I know, they can be very, very useful, and there are some really good PCSOs out there. But as far as I know, they don't actually have the power of arrest, do they?
They can detain people. I mean, a citizen can make an arrest. So I think their presence would be, an interim measure.
But you have security guards already, and actually, interestingly, Dave's been in touch, who says, "Good evening, Peter. Why doesn't the guy doing the shoplifting experiment, our journalist who was there, we showed his report a minute ago, ask the security guys why they don't stop people when they stand there watching the screens? Why pay for security if they just watch these crimes?" And that is a big point. I mean, what are security guards actually for?
Well, I can't but agree with you. The simple fact is that having somebody watching a screen while somebody wearing a mask and a balaclava helmet is helping themselves to thousands of pounds worth of stock is absolutely useless. I think that the problem is that we need greater regulation in the security industry that gives the guards more training to a better standard, up to something like a PCSO, and then you can start talking about what powers you're giving them. But you can't just put any guy, who puts on a reflective jacket and I'm in charge of security. That's a recipe for danger and disaster
but
injury.
Clearly so many of these security guards are just not a deterrent. It's really interesting about going forward. What about going backwards as well? Stephen's been in touch from Belfast, and he said he worked in retail for many, many years. He said, every shoplifter we caught over my career, we issued with an exclusion order, which I signed. We had a lever arch file full of thousands of them. Maybe you could look up and see if they still exist. The purpose of these was that if someone re-offended who had been issued with one, I could then charge them with or they could then be charged with a more serious crime of burglary. My security team enjoyed their job. They often got physical with the captives who fought back, all within the law, of course. They were very fit, and I don't mean good looking, says Stephen. All of that just doesn't happen anymore, does it?
No, it doesn't. And while you were speaking, I was watching the video of what was going on in Clapham just a week ago. And we have to get consequences into this. We have to have things like mobile police units with 10, 15, 20 officers on that can respond quickly and not just arrest one or two or three of these people. We need to make sure that tens and 20s, scores of them that are arrested quickly and brought before the courts, and there has to be a consequence. Too often these days, people are blaming society for social deprivation, poor housing, whatever. People have to take responsibility for their own actions, and courts have to determine whether this is proper criminality and impose a penalty, and do it quickly.
It's interesting within all this, because the person who did the right thing, the man Walker, who was at Waitrose, he has been deprived of a job, whereas, as far as we know, the people who were actually shoplifting have faced no consequences in this. It's completely out of control.
Yeah, and I could not agree with you more. I think it's a great shame. And if the guy's broken some Waitrose rule or other, okay, give him some words of advice, but don't take his livelihood away from him. And I think what the chief exec of Iceland did in offering the guy a job was the right thing to do. And I think that most members of the public will say, well, he was a security guard. He was there to stop theft. That's what he did. And now you're being penalised for it. It makes no sense at all.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's interesting, Trish has been in touch and says, I don't know if this applies to all stores, but I know of a little where you cannot exit unless the exit auto gate recognises a receipt. Tricia, you're not the first person who's told me about that. I think that's a really good idea. Roy, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think it comes back to what I was saying right at the start. I think this is James cleverly said this is a whole society problem, and it is. It's what we teach people in schools about being responsible for their actions, but it's about supermarkets as well, saying, you cannot steal from our stores. You've got to come out this way. You will be stopped. You will be photographed. If you walk out of our stores with stolen goods, you will be photographed. We will give it to the police, and we will try and prosecute you. And I think we need a bit more force and a bit more aggression in the way we deal with these incidents.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That is Roy Ram there, is former Commander of Specialist Operations at the Metropolitan Police. Lots to debate in that. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Another big debate we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the programme is euthanasia, and Anna has been in touch with a voice note on that. She sent it in via WhatsApp on 0344 499 1000. You can do it too. If you keep them to less than a minute, we'll play them out if it's legal to do so, which it absolutely is in Anna's case. Let's hear what she had to say.
How do we trust these people? The same people that medical practitioners that don't appear to know whether a lady has a penis or not, blue hair, out on strike. You trust those people to make a decision to end a teenager's life. That poor young person had a whole wonderful life ahead of them that, given the right support, they could have lived.
We'll talk about all of that later in the programme, but Anna, thank you for that. We'll also talk about Walker Smith, the Waitrose employee who now may well see himself working for Iceland after he's received that job interview. And on euthanasia, Alex in Cardiff says euthanasia shouldn't really be a consideration. Palliative care needs to be fixed first, and you worry that elderly and mentally ill might feel a burden. And I think once you start, it's a slippery slope. I knew a man who'd been given 3 months to live and survived 6 more years. If palliative care works properly, you shouldn't need euthanasia. Having done palliative care, it was really bad, but you only really had 2 days of absolute pain, and doctors make it as easy as possible, says Alex. Well, thanks for that. Dawn says the days when the leader of the Green Party was Natalie Bennett seem far off. She might have seemed mad as a box of frogs, but she doesn't have dangerous ideas like Polanski. It is really interesting with Natalie Bennett. I think there's big splits in the Green Party. There are lots of different people who are not happy with Zach Polanski. Even as deputy, I can't somehow see Mohan Ali dancing with people in bondage gear on stages at festivals, and also the fact that I do think it's riddled with Islamists as well. It's a really, really big issue. Penny in Essex says, Peter, if Polanski gets in, it will be the end. 20 miles an hour for cars will be impossible because cars are not made to drive at such low speeds. In fact, some cars would even stall at that speed. What is your thought? There's so many different interesting issues around today. We're going to talk as well about this fascinating article that's been published about benefits treats, how Britain has become a freeloader's paradise. The fact that, I mean, just some of this detail. Let me just read you a little bit of this, actually. This is when people go to various attractions, and Robert Jenrick has been tweeting about it. Under a reform UK government, you will be able to use benefits to get discounts like the ones I'm going to tell you about. A trip to the Tower of London for a family of 4, £111. But if one of the parents is on universal credit or a long list of other benefits, a £107 saving is applied, and the whole family gets in for £4. The Zoological Society offers those on universal credit an £82 discount to London Zoo. That reduces the family ticket from £108 to £26. HMS Belfast, another big attraction in London, £68 discount. St Paul's Cathedral, £61 discount. Westminster Abbey, £60 discount. Kew Gardens, £45 discount. And it's not just in London, it's throughout the country as well, places like Alton Towers and others, where you get a major discount if you're on universal credit. Is that something you support? Is that fair? What about people who actually do work and aren't on universal credit? Lots to discuss on all of this. We'll take calls on shoplifting, we'll take calls on Starmer, we'll talk about Israel, we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. 0344 499 1000. We'll take some calls after the break. Stay with us.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Sinks, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Benny in Belfast has been in touch and says, just back from San Francisco, where the new mayor is forging ahead with a successful anti-crime initiative, particularly in the downtown shopping area, similar to London's Oxford Street. More funding for police, more uniform police presence and visible, including inside high-target stores such as Nike. They're already clamping down hard on the drug trade with zero tolerance of drug selling on the streets. Still many problems there, but crime is down and the downtown area of San Francisco is safer. It can be done. Criminals can be taken on, but it needs political commitment and funding and strong policing. Interesting from Benny there in Belfast. Let's go to Andy in Lincolnshire on shoplifting. What are your thoughts, Andy?
Hi, Peter.
Hi there, great to talk to you.
Shoplifting. Why can't they... They're not going to be able to attack them or use batons or anything like that. There's the security guards, but they can use a spray, an aerosol, to tag...
You think they should be allowed to use things like pepper spray, mace and things like that?
No, not pepper spray or mace.
Okay.
These are non-toxic sprays. I'm sure I've seen somewhere.
Okay.
That so you can identify someone. They dye them.
Oh yes, I've seen those, certainly. Yes, they're often purple. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a purple dye, yeah. So you think that would be one way of... I think the problem is as well, I mean, it's a whole system problem, Andy, isn't it, as we're hearing from Roy Ram there, and we know this. I've seen this, where there just aren't consequences. When I was a young reporter, I remember going into magistrates' courts, and people suspended, sentenced this, a fine of this, they pay at £5 a week, and on it goes. And you just think, where is the deterrent here, Andy? Is there one?
There isn't. I was in prison myself for a crime I didn't commit. That's a different story. But basically, everyone who was in prison was on recall. They kept committing crimes.
Yes.
And it was petty crimes.
So they say you have 3 months sentence, 3 months suspended. Don't do anything in the second 3 months, and then they did something, and then they came back and had to serve the 3 months.
For the year that I was there, I saw the same people come back 3 times.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting, Andy. Listen, thanks for that. That's Andy in Lincolnshire there. Let's go to Tony in Doncaster. He has some thoughts on Israel. Tony?
Hiya, Peter.
Hi there.
Peter, hiya. Before I say something, I have to be so careful what I'm saying. I'm consciously aware of it. It's to do with the Falklands, which I'm glad you brought the point up earlier on, and I raised this 3 weeks ago. Is it possible, before I ask the question, if it's factual, to raise my concerns about the Falklands to do with the links with Israel without being deemed anti-Semitic?
Of course you can. Of course you can.
Good. I just want to get that clear now, because I'm not any left-wing agenda. I'm right-wing, and my family was from a conservative background.
No, you don't need to qualify it. I mean, you're more than welcome to criticise. You're more than welcome to criticise the government of Israel, what they've done historically. That's fine. Right. I'm not calling you. I wouldn't call anybody an anti-Semite simply for doing that.
Okay, well, I'll cut to the chase. A couple of weeks ago, I expressed my displeasure with Israel based on the facts that and this is relevant now to what I'm going to go to with the Falklands now.
Yeah.
Back in '82, on the fact that they were supplying Skyhawk planes Stinger missiles that anybody can check with MOD website. And
that is factually true. I know that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, we know that's true. And my concern is this, and I said this a couple of weeks ago. Millet, who was born an Orthodox Roman Catholic, has decided he's going to convert himself to Judaism, and why this is the Argentinian Prime Minister. And what concerns me is this: over the last 6 months, he's made at least, to best of my knowledge, 4 visits to Israel. There's been suggested that he's trying to raise funds again for a link for the Falklands. And because...
Do you honestly think that Javier Millet is thinking of invading the Falklands again? Really?
Yeah, I do. And I'll back this up for a couple of reasons why.
Sure. Okay, go ahead.
Argentina has the biggest links to Israel of any South American continent.
So you think he wants to get the weapons from Israel?
Yeah, I do. And I'll tell you the reason why. Because Rockhopper are down there, and there is suggestions, there's not facts, but there may be potential oil reserves down there with the British. And my worry and concern is now that we've got no naval base and our forces are at a joke, and based on the fact with history that Israel have sided with Argentina because there is a what's called a large minority of Jewish people live in Argentina, the facts do concern me.
Well, the historical facts are correct. There's no denying that they did supply those weapons. The interesting point, I think, is: do you really think we're in for another Falklands invasion? I mean, that's a big leap, is it not?
Well, if you look on the basis that he's got close links with Donald Trump, and the fact that we've got no weapons down there, and America's got no, how can I put it? They've got no respect for us because of Starmer. We're now a limped animal. The world knows we're a joke because we have one warship that broke down on Cyprus, and that's down to Labour and Conservatives over the last 20 years actually neglecting our forces and our security. And yet, it's a concern going forward.
But I mean, Israel and the UK are very close allies, or meant to be close allies. I think we've let down Israel very, very substantially, particularly over the last 2.5 years. But do you honestly think Netanyahu would? I mean, I'm not saying this is a conspiracy theory. You're absolutely entitled to your view, and I'm not rubbishing it at all. I'm simply saying it's a bit of a leap. Do you honestly think there's enough bad blood that Netanyahu would say, right, we're going to supply the Argentinians with weapons, take the Falklands if you want to?
Yeah. What does the old Britain?
Really interesting. Very interesting there. Listen, thank you, Tony. Appreciate that. That's Tony in Doncaster there. What do you think of that one? Goodness me, 0344 499 1000. Cindy's in Michigan. Let's get an American perspective about Starmer. What do you think of Starmer, Cindy? The great peacemaker who's in the Middle East to sort everything out.
Oh, my goodness. First of all, great show.
Thank you.
Always, Peter, as always.
Thank you.
What do I think about Starmer? I want to totally make clear that we, the U.S., do not think of the UK as a joke. We love the UK, but we think of Starmer as the joke.
Mm-hmm. And you echo your president's thoughts on that, perhaps? He's very angry with Starmer in many ways.
Yes, he's acting like right now, he's acting like he had a role in this peacemaking situation going on in the Middle East, and he didn't have any role. He wanted nothing to do with it.
But Cindy, if he's not tarnished with being in favour of these strikes, could he actually be a peacemaker? Could he be someone who could bring the two sides together, perhaps, if he's been sort of neutral in this?
No, because he's being looked at as nobody respects him.
Okay.
Nobody respects him because it's clear that he's just there right now to save face.
Very interesting thoughts. Cindy, thank you. That's Cindy all the way from Michigan in the United States. Wherever you are around the world, if you're in the UK, if you're our regular listeners in Australia and New Zealand, for example, some people using the show as their breakfast programme, which is marvellous. If you're in the United States where it's a little bit earlier in the day, maybe you're having a nice afternoon watching or listening to the programme, or you're here in the UK and hurtling towards bedtime, you're very, very welcome. And I love this programme, I love doing this job, and I love the variety of views that we hear. Tony in Doncaster telling me something I hadn't even thought of before. I'm a bit sceptical, to be brutally honest, but nonetheless, really, really interesting to hear from him and Cindy and everybody else. So get your call in and let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep the exchange of views going on the Evening Exchange. 0344 499 1000. We're certainly going to have two people who will disagree in just a moment. This is the benefits treats, how Britain has become a freeloaders paradise, plastered around Westminster this Easter, adverts for the Tower of London, the perfect place for troublemakers. Pre-book now. Members go free, but nearly enough free do those people on universal credit. It's not just about London, it's about right around the country where people who are on benefits are getting massive discounts when it comes to expensive places to go, whether that's Kew Gardens or Alton Towers or the Science Museum or wherever. Big discounts are coming. Is that fair? I'd love to hear from people who are on benefits. I'd love to hear from people who are not on benefits as to what they think. We'll also hear from Matthew Hulbert, the political commentator, in a second, and Maxwell Marlowe, the Director of Public Affairs at the Adam Smith Institute, who have contrasting views on this. Thank you also to Darren in South Wales, who says if Malay wants the Falklands, he's just got to say they belong to Argentina and go to the international court, and they'll give them to them, and we'll give them to him and give him billions without a shot fired, says Darren. Also, Margaret in Birmingham says this country is on its knees. Shoplifting is out of control. Thousands are crossing the channel. Starmer is once again not bothered. How long do the British people have to tolerate this? We deserve a leader with a backbone. He should get back here and put his country first, says Margaret in Birmingham. What do you think? Do you agree with Margaret? 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I want to talk now about Benefits Britain, how Britain became a freeloaders paradise in some people's view. This is about trips to expensive attractions, including the Tower of London, for example. I can see it out the window here from Talk Towers. Well, I could if it wasn't dark. For a family of four, if you go there, it costs £111. We can all agree that is quite a lot of money. But if one of the parents is on universal credit or a long list of other benefits, a £107 saving is applied. The whole family can get in for £4. London Zoo sold 300,000 universal credit tickets in the financial year 24-25. You only needed to provide a screenshot of a PDF required as proof to get the discount. Historic royal palaces, they run various different, well, as the name would suggest, historic royal palaces, including the Tower of London, show they have adjusted the admission income yield to ensure overall income isn't reduced. So basically, those of us buying full price tickets are paying more to subsidise the cheaper tickets for people who are on benefits. This week, the standard universal credit allowance rose by 6.2%, just double last year's inflation rate. What do you think about this? Is this reasonable? Is this a decent thing? Is this a fair thing? We're dealing with inflation, We're dealing with a recession, which is probably coming. It's not there just quite yet, but we're basically there. Some people feel their own personal growth of their own funds has been in negative growth. Matthew Hulbert is a political commentator, is with us now, and Maxwell Marlowe, Director of Public Affairs at the Adam Smith Institute. You're both very welcome to the programme. Matthew, perhaps I can start with you. What's your view on this?
Hi, Peter. Great to be with you tonight, and hi to Maxwell as well. Well, I don't think you'll be surprised to hear, Peter, that I think this is pretty darn disgraceful. I think this appears to be persecuting some of the poorest and most vulnerable people in society, and in effect saying to them, sorry, you've hit upon hard times. We're sorry about that, but we're really not sorry. And not only have you hit upon hard times, but you're not allowed to go anywhere in your life at all. You've just got to stay at home.
Okay, how is it persecuting people by giving them stuff cheaper?
Well, but the whole point is that Reform UK don't want to do that. That's the whole point, isn't it?
Well, it is to a degree, but I think the principle of it in general, I think we can probably talk about as well. Robert Jenrick, certainly, who is the Treasury spokesman for Reform UK, has talked about this, certainly. He says it wouldn't happen under Reform UK. He says it's something he doesn't want to happen under Reform UK. I'm just trying to find the exact tweet, and I can't. But that is certainly what he has said. Maxwell Marlowe is Director of Public Affairs at the Adam Smith Institute. What do you think?
Well, good evening, Peter. I think this is clearly disgraceful that this is really happening when we have 4 million people who are not required to try and find work. And yet, I mean, look, I work next to Westminster Abbey. I haven't been. Do you want to know why? It's so expensive to go. Likewise, the Tower of London. Likewise, a lot of these areas, it's so expensive to go. And, you know, Michael Simmons, who's a good friend of mine, who's done this really quite delicate research, looked into it, find out why these things are so expensive. A lot of it is because we are subsidising people who don't want to go to work, and yet they expect the working families fundamentally, mums and dads who've got a couple of kids working really hard night and day to subsidise people who are clocking onto welfare because essentially the government's gone round and said you need to reduce the cost of your services. I think it is absolutely disgraceful, especially when the welfare bill is at £333 billion a year. And just to put this in some context, if I may, Peter, very quickly, Carolyn Elsom Onwards produced a brilliant report earlier this year on passporter benefits, which is really what this is. So if you've got universal credit, employment support allowance, pension credit, whatever else, it's a master key to unlocking lots of different bits of benefits. She found that is costing us £10 billion a year. And by the way, that's about as much as it costs to have a fully armed nuclear deterrent. It's crazy.
Okay, Robert Jenrick, just to, it was obviously the last piece of paper on the desk, although why would I continue looking for something I just found? Robert Jenrick said, working people are being taken for a ride. Under a Reform UK government, you won't be able to use benefits to get discounts like this. What's wrong with that, Matthew Hulbert?
Well, I mean, I want to put a bit of a spoke in Maxwell's wheels there, because, of course, what he forgot to mention is that many people who are on universal credit do indeed work, but because of the poverty wages that are often paid out by companies, they still can't afford
they can't pay poverty wages. Hold on, they can't pay poverty wages, can they? Because there is a minimum wage in this country, and you presumably think that is too low, but it is nonetheless legal to do that.
Yeah, it is, and thank goodness that we do have a minimum wage, and it was probably people like Maxwell who opposed that when that came in back in the 1990s.
I think he probably wasn't alive, but anyway. The point I would like to ask Matthew Hulbert is, if you're in a situation, I'm not saying for a second that people on benefits shouldn't be able to go to the British Museum or the Science Museum or whatever. My point is that if you have a rise in universal credit, which has gone up by 6.2%, just shy of double last year's inflation rate. You have people who do work, who are going out to work every day, who are subsidising, whose taxes that they pay are already paying for universal credit, are being hit again because if they want to go somewhere and take the family out at Easter, for example, to somewhere like the Tower of London, they're subsidising people who are already subsidised by our society to go there.
But sometimes people hit upon hard times, Peter.
It's not
and
sometimes, though,
why...
is it? It's not sometimes. It's a lot. It's a lot of the time, and it's people who are on benefits a lot of the time. I'm not against benefits. I'm not demonising people who are on benefits. I'm not saying that people who are disabled shouldn't get benefits, or people who genuinely can't find work should get benefits to some degree. What we're seeing is people who go to work every day who get nothing, who get the money they're paid and nothing else. There's no reward for doing the right thing.
Well, I'm pleased to hear, Peter, that you do indeed support some kind of welfare state. I mean, maybe we can ask Maxwell if he does, or if he'd abolish that if he was Prime Minister
Let's ask him
tomorrow.
now. Let's ask him now.
I mean, okay, fine. I mean, I do support universal, basic income, fundamentally. I find it baffling from you, Matthew, that you're a Liberal Democrat and you believe in the, the ability of the state to come in and tell employers and working people what they can and can't, pay to afford these services. I think it's absolutely baffling. It's probably why Liberal Democrats are falling so far down in the polls at the moment, because they've lost their liberal aspects of their regime. I think it's mad. But on to the point, really, Peter, here, is that, again, what are the incentive structures here? Why should I've got 2 jobs, I can't afford to go to these museums because I'm bailing out people who don't want to sign on to go to work. I think it's absolutely mad. And I've seen across the media at the moment, across X, across a lot of the platforms that we're seeing, working people who are working night and day, really, really angry about this. And, I think it's really good journalism from the Spectator who are saying, why are these people who are already paying so much in taxes, we're at a record level of taxation in this country, having to go to these, institutions and pay even more money for this welfare state? I think it's absolutely ludicrous. I'm surprised your viewers aren't up in arms about this.
So Maxwell, you've said this a couple of times now, and I really want to pick you up on it. You said these are people who don't want to look for work. On what are you basing that? On what are you making that mass generalisation about people that have hit upon hard times and that are claiming benefits? Come on, defend yourself.
Sure. So Department of Work statistics that came out under last budget show that 4 million people are not required to work in the next budget, over the next year. We can see that rise to about 5.5 million by the end of this Parliament. We have about 140,000 people who are looking for work and are required by DWP. So the stats are really clear on this, to be honest, Matthew. And what we can see, actually, even from the government's own employment advisor, is that he wants to crack down on this sort of behaviour, because he can see it's bankrupting the country. And again, look at the OBR's own stats on this: £333 billion this year on welfare. By the end of the Parliament, it's 400 billion. Where's the growth? Where's it coming from? Because I can tell you, we are not going to be able to pay for this in a few years' time.
Matthew?
It's amazing, isn't it? We always punch down. We always kick down. We never punch up to those at the big end of town.
That's
in the
a different
city
argument.
With their
That's a completely
wallet.
different argument, which we've had many times, Matthew.
Well, let's have it again.
No, I mean, look, you don't like rich people. I get that. I understand that. We're in a situation, though, where you're not punching down. You're simply saying, why should people in the middle, who are neither punching down nor punching up, who are working really hard? Here's Phil, who has messaged me to say, I'm on the minimum wage. £111 to take my family to the Tower of London is a big chunk out of my money. I'd love to go, but I can't, because I have council tax, utility bills, etc. Yet someone sat on their backside gets in for a huge discount. What would you say to Phil?
Well, I mean, what I'd say is that I too am on a very modest wage, and there's things that I can't afford to go to. But you know what? I have compassion for those who are even worse off than me, and I don't just think that they should just sit at home and never be allowed to go anywhere nice with them and their family, which seems to be your position, Peter, and the position of Maxwell, which is pretty damn disgraceful.
Well, you're clearly not listening, Matthew, because that's not what I said at the start. The point is that if these things are expensive, then I mean, there are lots of things you can do on a budget. There are lots of, I mean, for example, not to be Mother Teresa, but I volunteered for about 8 or 9 years with a scheme with a young person who's in the care system, and we have to do activities in London that are less than £25. And believe me, you can find an awful lot of things to do, whether it's going out for a quick bite of something small, whether it's going to subsidised activities to some degree, which have happened for carers, for example, where I get in free as a carer, and that's something which I have done, so I'm just be totally open about that. Also, we're in a situation where there are an awful lot of people who really would like to do these kind of things, but I mean, there's Phil on a minimum wage saying I can't go to the Tower of London, but someone who doesn't get up in the morning and doesn't go to work and doesn't have to find work, like the 4 million people that Maxwell was talking about there, is actually in a situation.
But what is
let me finish the question, Matthew.
Yeah. Okay.
Someone who does get up in the morning has to pay £111, but somebody doesn't can pay £4. That's not fair, is it?
But what is the reason that these people, according to you two, don't have to look for work? Is it disability? Is it very serious mental health problems? I mean, it's the generalisation that I don't like, when these are all individuals and it should be judged on an individual basis. I don't like the idea that they're all feckless and there's all of these dreadful people. I just don't have. Maybe I'm just more generous than you two.
Do you accept that some people are lazy and some people are feckless?
Well, yes. I mean, of course I do. And you know, maybe we need to somehow means test this, or I don't know, have some kind of scheme to show that you're not feckless before you get in. But I think that'll be very few people in number.
Maxwell.
I mean, look, sorry, I lost you for a second there. Sorry about that. Look, what I would do in this aspect fundamentally is I would permit, the sort of in-kind benefit to go to people who are looking for work, and I'd want a doctor's note fundamentally for people who are, not allowed to, not allowed to look for work. I think that'd be okay. At the moment, though, and this is acknowledged across the board, including by Ed Davey, by the way, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, that we have a benefit system which is not properly looking after the people it's supposed to look after. It's granting too much leave for people who can't look for work. There are so many other areas, and I don't want to overgeneralize here. The labour market is highly, highly regulated. We can see that with the employment and labour statistics coming out at the moment. That needs to change too. But I do think it is absolutely disgraceful that we have a system which incentivizes you not to be in work, and therefore enjoy these things at a much lower cost compared to if you are in work. And let's not forget here of the massive wage compression that's happened over the years, which therefore results in the fact that working people can't afford to go to the Tower of London, whereas people who are on benefits and are not looking for work can.
Matthew?
Well, first of all, I just want to point out that I don't hate the rich. I just would like to see them pay a wee bit more in
They pay loads.
tax. So
they pay absolutely
afford...
loads in tax. They pay loads in tax.
Well, they don't
40%
pay
of the income tax bill.
They should pay a bit more to help fund public services.
They should pay more than 40% of the tax bill.
From which we all benefit,
you know what happens, don't you, when millionaires leave, when they go to Dubai or they go elsewhere? You know we don't get their tax anymore, don't you? So if you're saying again and again and again, we're just going to tax these highly mobile people, they leave.
I mean, and if I could just jump in there as well, Peter. Last year we lost the income tax equivalent of the city of Leeds from the number of millionaires who left. The city of Leeds essentially left.
Well, that's not very patriotic on their behalf, is it, Maxwell? That's not very patriotic of them, is it? That they've just jumped off?
I mean, but I'm sorry, Matthew. You said it's up to individuals, and these are individuals, and they've chosen to take their money where they want to go because of our tax system. Because we have to compete in a global economy. I think we're losing the point here fundamentally. If we want individuals to decide, I do not think that government-sponsored organisations, such as, let's say, HMS Belfast, who are currently in the Thames, owned by Imperial War Museum, which is a subsidiary of the government, likewise Kew Gardens, should be further subsidising people to attend, even if they're on universal credit or whatever else. I think, though, if you're a private charity and you want to do that with your money, absolutely fine. But you need rich people for the philanthropy to fund this sort of stuff.
Final word from Matthew, please.
Well, I mean, I just think that this is a war on the poor from Reform UK, and it might win them a few votes, I suppose, but I think it's pretty damn disgraceful.
Thank you both very much. Matthew Hilbert there, political commentator, and Maxwell Marlowe, Director of Public Affairs at the Adam Smith Institute. What do you think about this? 0344 499 1000. That's the number. Faye in Worcester has phoned me on. Faye, what do you think?
Hi
there.
I just caught a bit of the put the radio on. I caught about the discussion about the benefits regarding Tower of London and everything.
What do you think?
I can see where people are coming from, but I think people at the moment are pointing the fingers a lot of people on benefits. rightly so, they might hear the stories about people, you know, say they can get this benefit and that benefit. But the bottom line is the basic rate for benefits for people over 25 is 424 quid. That's it. And they've got to pay, all right, some authorities don't charge the council tax, but some people do. Depends where you live, but they've got to pay all the bills, transport, and try and find a job. And I feel they finger point a lot towards people on benefits when they should be like getting more angry at the government.
Do you think
With
it's
the
fair?
government at the moment, they've done that. They've got rid of the benefit cap regarding the two-child, which I don't agree with. I'm a lone parent. I've worked, and I've been on the tax credit system and the UC system. And it's hard to get off the benefits. You feel like you're going to get there, then all of a sudden your wages go down or your hours go down. And
So you do work then, Faye?
I used to now. I'm a carer now for my disabled son.
Okay.
I had to become a full-time carer for him because.
I'm sorry to hear that, Faye. That's a big responsibility.
No, he was born disabled, but because of when he reaches 25, he doesn't get a PA anymore. So I had to step in to help him function a bit better. He's got autism, so he's on benefits and he can't get a job. He gets a job, he's in they let him go after a week because they can't cope with his autism. So he's on and off all the time and it just messes with his UC. But anyway, it's like a lot of people on benefits generally struggle in a sense like they may not have a car, they have to use public transport, and the majority of them don't go away on holiday. Yes, you hear those stories, but when people generalise it to a point, it gets quite frustrating and demoralising to people that don't take the mick.
Yes.
You know, I had to.
I've just got to tell you, Faye, I have absolutely no problem with you getting benefits. You're dealing with a son who needs a carer. You know, you're doing a good job for him, and I don't want you to not be able to do nice things. I don't want you to live a life of misery.
But that's what I'm trying to say too. We don't. Because when I can't even get to London, because I haven't got a car, I can't afford to get on a train. It's a nightmare just to get on a bus where I live, in a sense, because the public transport, you know, it's like a fiver.
Yeah.
Both way, one, you know, return sort of thing. But so I have to limit that. So I just feel that at the moment there's a lot of like shouting. Like I've heard people like online that go, "Oh, what's the point of working?" And I'm like, "Well, you try and live off 424 quid a month then." Yeah, and if you got a mortgage, you don't get any help with that. If you know, and you got your rent, and sometimes you don't get. If you're private rented, you don't get the help. Yes, there's a lot of people on benefits that do take the mick, but there's people at work that take the mick. You know, you can look at corruption, whatever and whatever. And if you
can I just ask you, Faye? Can I just ask you, when it comes to these, you've told us about your life more generally. If you could get to London, for example, let's just use the Tower of London because it's the one we're talking about, and get to see it for £4 rather than £111, do you think that's fair that you could be able to do that?
They need to do. Why aren't there no one getting angry? Why is it costing £111?
Well, but part of the reason that it's costing £111 is that they're giving subsidies to people who are on benefits to get in. Well, is there a fair way through that in your view, Faye?
Well, yeah, there's a flat rate. If they say charge £20 or £50, everyone can manage £50, surely.
Could you manage £50?
Well, yeah, because you get your child benefit. People that work get child benefit.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you're getting two children, it's about £190 a child benefit.
So they should use the benefits they already have. Yeah. I've got to go to a break.
So they can use that. I use that for days out round me or extra shopping.
That's what you used it for.
Go to the cinema, but some people I know work put that aside for for the children's university, which is great. It's their money, what they can do whatever they want with it.
Faye, I've got to go to a break because I'm being shouted at by my producer. But listen, apologies for that. Great call. We'll take a break now and get more of your reaction to this in just a second.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, the voice notes are coming in thick and fast, particularly on the benefits issue. Sadia has this one.
I bet most regular people who get up, alarm clock Britain lot, that get up and go to work, can't afford this. Probably can't even afford a coffee or a milkshake for their kid at the weekend. I'm speaking from experience, yet they get discounts and are able to enjoy themselves. Why aren't they at home looking for a job if they're on universal credit? What are they doing queuing up or fast-tracking at events and attractions?
Sadia, thanks for that. Rachel has some thoughts too.
Personally, I think it's a good thing. I do think it is very heavily discounted, but I do think it is a good thing. And I would just urge people before they jump to anything and start getting irate about it to just stop and think and put themselves in other people's shoes. I know there are so many people playing the system. I get that. And it's something I find infuriating myself. But there are so many genuine people. And there are people that have had a really bad start in life that are trying to claw their way through life that would never even be able to dream of affording even a £20, £25 ticket for something, like Kew Gardens, for example. They would never be able to go to those things, and it's opening up those things to people.
But Rachel, my point to you, I don't disagree with what you say necessarily, but my point to you would be there are loads of people who are working who've had a rough start in life. There are loads of people who are working who would struggle to pay £25 to get into Kew Gardens or even 20 quid to go to an Odeon cinema and have a popcorn and a drink or whatever. There are basic treats, there are basic things that people only want to do once a month, once every 6 weeks, that are out of people's range these days. And that is, and if you look over your shoulder and you see someone who's not working for whatever reason, who gets these privileges and gets these discounts, is that fair? That's what I want to get into between now and 10. So let me know what you think of what Sadia and Rachel have said there. Nick has texted me to say it's not a war against the poor. The point is working class are being constantly squeezed. It's totally disproportionate to expect working class people to pay £110 and those on benefits £4. Our nurses have to access food banks. People do not have any additional cash after extortionate bills. People are having to put the washing machine on or have a shower after 9 o'clock because of the cost of water bills. I work 2 jobs, one is in child protection, and every month it is difficult to make ends meet, says Nick. Another person says, well, you should have asked Matthew, why should someone not working be able to afford to go to these activities more than someone working? I sort of slightly did ask him that, but Phil, it's a very, very good point. And Jane says, I'm sorry, but I am sick of subsidising the unemployed. Rachel says, your guest is saying that people who are lazing about and playing the system are taking up the discounts. I doubt that. It's nice that people who have done well in life, had they better chances, are most likely to use the discounts. I'm someone who was in the position where I needed support. I got myself out of that. It's taken years and a lot of 60-hour weeks in college on top of work and school runs. I'd visit those places. I love history. I read Milton. Not all people on benefits are scum. No one's saying that at all, Rachel. Don't worry. And I'm glad you enjoy Milton. Perhaps you've found some paradise with that. Dave in Litchfield says, every person Labour gets on benefits is a vote, or as Thatcher put it, a government that robs Peter to pay Paul can always depend on the support of Paul. Thanks also to Elisa in Chelmsford, who says, my local Morrison's requires a receipt to exit. It works very well. She's talking about shoplifting. Lots of people are getting in on all these big topics. Make sure you get your point across too. 0344 499 1000. We'll also talk about euthanasia next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
The benefits debate is one you want to take part in. 0344 499 1000. This is people getting into places like London Zoo. If you are working full time and not on universal credit, it's £108. If you are on universal credit, it's £26. Is that fair? Let me know your thoughts. We're also talking about Dutch doctors euthanizing young people with autism. Canada is a place where there's a big debate about euthanasia as well. We'll talk to Dr. Gordon MacDonald from Care Not Killing in just a second. We're also talking about Iran, about the Russian military, their navy, and what they're doing on our shores and how the government's reacting to all of that as well. And Starmer, the peacemaker, do you believe his presence in Saudi Arabia is conducive to getting a proper ceasefire and getting the Straits of Hormuz and the Iran war sorted out? Whatever you think, whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, get in touch. 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a WhatsApp voice message or a WhatsApp text message to 0344 499 1000. Keep your voice messages to less than a minute, please. Don't forget you can call on that number too. So much to discuss between now and 10 o'clock. Stay with us here on the Evening Exchange on Talk. There's a really disturbing story that was sent to me by a viewer to this programme, and if you do have stories that you want us to debate, please send them in. Just send it to me on Twitter, drop me an email, give us a ring, whatever you want us to cover, let me know, because, you know, there are only a few of us, but there are a lot of you, and if there are particular things you want us to cover, let us know and we will cover them, certainly. And I love doing stories that other people outside this newsroom have suggested, because there's a lot of wisdom out there. This is a horrible story about someone who was diagnosed with autistic spectrum disorder 4.5 years ago in the Netherlands. He was euthanized at his request. We know the boy is aged between 16 and 18. He described his life as joyless. He struggled with anxiety and mood-related problems, where he fits in, oversensitive to stimuli. He said every day was an ordeal he had to get through, according to the latest annual report from the Netherlands Regional Euthanasia Death Review Committee. In the final weeks before his death, he lay in bed the whole time. Despite his young age, his doctor had apparently no doubts whatsoever the young man had the mental capacity to appreciate what he was seeking and that there was no prospect of improvement. His death, part of a dramatic increase in the psychiatric euthanasia in Netherlands in the recent years, should serve, I think, as a warning to us all, especially as Canada and indeed this country are debating assisted dying and what we do in this country specifically, whether it goes ahead, although it doesn't look as if it's going to go ahead at all in this country. But I think the debate will come round again. Gordon MacDonald, Dr. Gordon MacDonald, is the Chief Executive of Care Not Killing. Gordon, we've kept you a little bit waiting this evening, and I really appreciate your patience on this. Tell me your thoughts on what has happened in the Netherlands.
Well, I think it's a very shocking story, but it has been developing over a number of years. The first psychiatric euthanasia cases in the Netherlands happened in 2010. There was only 2 cases then. And what's happened since is that the numbers have increased steadily, so that last year it was 219 cases. And I just think that that's absolutely disgraceful, quite frankly, that suicide and euthanasia have become so normalised that doctors now think that it's an appropriate way to deal with people who've got psychiatric illness.
If this young man, I agree with you, but let me play devil's advocate. If this young man wants to take his own life, should he be allowed to do so?
Well, why would you have any boundaries at all if that was your view? Why would we invest in suicide prevention programs? Why would we try to discourage people from, violent suicides? Society has traditionally taken the view that suicide is not a good thing and it shouldn't be encouraged. And particularly on the internet, now with, some of these websites that are encouraging young people to consider that, there's a lot of concern about that. There was the Bridgend suicide contagion cases a few years ago, and a lot of the debate about what's happening on the internet, in Parliament is around these tragic cases. But then, on the other hand, we have European governments that are supporting young people to end their lives by suicide because they have psychiatric illnesses.
I mean, all those points are absolutely fair. I just wonder whether you think the debate is now dead in this country, or whether it will continue, and whether there will be others who will try to make even the limited form of assisted dying, as they would call it, assisted suicide, as you would call it, happen.
Well, it's not dead in the sense that Jersey passed a law a few weeks ago. The Isle of Man law was passed but hasn't been given royal assent because there are issues with the bill. It's not competent in terms of human rights. And so there's a dispute going on between the UK government and the Isle of Man government about that. But, you know, in terms of Scotland, obviously we were very pleased that the bill of the Scottish Parliament was defeated. MSPs who had voted for the bill saw that it was dangerous and they changed their minds and voted against it. We see that that's happening at Westminster too, that many of those who may support it in principle have concerns about the practice. And that's what's been happening in the House of Lords. These issues have been fleshed out. There's been a lot of concern in the House of Lords. Yes, this bill will probably run out of time. Everybody accepts that. But there are campaigners and members of Parliament that are pushing to bring it back in the next parliamentary session. And that's very concerning when all the Royal Colleges, which are neutral on the principle, have come out and said this bill is badly drafted and is dangerous and shouldn't be supported.
When people talk about the slippery slope, they say there won't be one, there'll be all these safeguards in the legislation that was originally put forward anyway. I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, look at the Netherlands and look at Canada and look at Oregon and places like that where these things do happen. I just wonder, how have we got here? Because there are lots of people who will say, look, palliative care is not nearly good enough. They've sometimes watched people die. I've been not exactly in the room, but certainly close to someone who died of cancer and was incredibly in an awful lot of pain in the last 2 days in particular. How do we do death better?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is properly invest in palliative care. Only about a third of funding of hospices comes from the NHS. And I think there's a huge need for politicians to prioritise palliative care. It's not actually that expensive. Most of the costs in the NHS are in acute settings and in expensive interventions. Many of these interventions aren't actually really necessary in the last year of life. So maybe once people have an initial diagnosis, at that point, palliative care should be brought in. But we also need to look at palliative care out of hours and in the community, which is sadly lacking in far too many cases, as you've highlighted in that example that you've given, I think. So, you know, there isn't really an excuse any longer for why we're not properly funding palliative care in this country. And I do think that that's what the politicians should be prioritising rather than seeking to bring back a bill which, you know, is fundamentally dangerous and can never be safe. Yes, we understand why people, you know, might fear death or fear the type of death they're going to have and want a peaceful death. Of course, we all understand that. But is this the solution? I don't think so, because it will put many people who are vulnerable at risk of pressure or coercion, and you can't protect against that.
What do you think it says, just getting back to the matter at hand there about this young man with autism, what do you think it says that doctors see assisted suicide as a solution to his problems? And they said that he wasn't going to feel better. For example, there was apparently no medical interventions that could actually make him feel better. I just wonder, you know, some people might say within this, I'm not one of them, but I'm just playing devil's advocate here because that's slightly part of my job. You know, some people might say, look, he had a hopeless life, he wanted to die, and these doctors said they could do nothing for him. Why would we allow him to continue a life of misery rather than allow him to carry out what he wanted to do?
I think part of the problem is that the law in the Netherlands, you know, is based on suffering. And of course, suffering is very subjective. Yeah. We are unable to say whether somebody's suffering is intolerable or not as a third party. So you just have to accept what people tell you. And obviously, if they're depressed...
we knew, I mean, I think it's reasonable to assume that someone with autistic spectrum disorder, in the set of circumstances that we're given, has, in his self-described way, a joyless life.
Yeah, but, you know, I think that we have to say, you know, is it good enough for professionals to just say there's nothing we can do and we're going to help you end your life? You know, the same is true with young girls with anorexia in Oregon or in Canada, you know, where the terminology of terminal anorexia has been invented by a couple of doctors in America and used to justify giving assisted suicide to people with anorexia. It seems to me that this is completely a failure of care and a failure of society if we say that death is a solution in these circumstances.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Gordon MacDonald, there, Chief Executive of Care Not Killing. An awful lot of people getting in touch on discounts on attractions, including Rob in Sussex, who says, I think it all goes back to the fact that those of us not on benefits don't mind genuine benefit claimants getting discounts, but we must have a clamp down on the people who are swinging the lead, says Rob. Joanna in Salisbury says there are some really poor people working on no more than people on benefits. They have to save to do things at full price. It's only fair that people on benefits save to do things. The only difference is when someone can access all of an attraction due to a disability. Deal says on the benefit situation, it would be interesting to know, based on a family of four, what the net gain for being on benefits plus the discount for days out versus paying the full prices. This would highlight the actual level of benefits these people are receiving. Ian says, I knew someone who stole a Prince album and got sprayed with purple dye. It ruined his raspberry beret. Yeah, Ian, Purple Rain, I see what you did there. Leslie says on Healy being in Russia ICU. Is that it? He has more knowledge of Russian ships than our own. Well, we're going to talk about that. And in an exciting move, there's a new clip of Keir Starmer out. Don't you go away, because that's coming up next.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
As promised, exciting developments. Keir Starmer has more wisdom to impart. This is what he's been telling Sky News in the last couple of hours.
I think the mood is very much one of shock that they were attacked in the first place, because of course they weren't attacking Iran, and the intensity of some of the attacks. Relief that there's now a ceasefire. I think a general sense that it's fragile, that there's work to do in relation to it, and then a lot of reflection and discussion, me with them, about the work we did over the last 6 to 7 weeks together in collective self-defence, the capabilities, and an opportunity, frankly, for me to say thank you to our personnel who are out here, who've been, many of the pilots been working from about 2 hours after the conflict started. So moving forward, but I'm very clear that one is very important. We stand with our long-standing allies and be here showing our support for them, reflecting on the work we're doing together, and for them a sense that we're a friend that's come at this time to have these really important discussions with them and to make sure this ceasefire is a permanent ceasefire and that the Strait of Hormuz is open, and that takes more than just words, it takes a lot of action.
Keir Starmer speaking to Sky News earlier today. He's in Saudi Arabia talking about all those ceasefire talks. We will return to that in a few minutes' time, but I want to talk about immigration first. And Norman Baker, the former Home Office Minister, is with me. Norman, good evening. Lovely to chat to you.
Hello, Peter.
France rejecting Britain's offer to intercept and return small boats. Also, there is yet more footage of French police standing idly by as migrants crowd into dinghies for a channel crossing. This is a week after the UK handed over 16.5 million quid to cover patrols. Do you believe, as a former Home Office Minister, that for the Liberal Democrats, that the Labour government is actually getting a grip on this in any way?
Well, they're not getting a grip in the sense that the numbers are not going down. In fact, they're going up. So that's, I suppose, a mark of where we are. The trouble is, of course, that there isn't much leverage that can be exerted on the French. If the French don't want to do anything at all, they can't be made to do anything. There's going to be attempts to bribe them to do things by giving them money. But ultimately, they don't have to do anything at all. And I'm sure if they've got people in their country they don't want, they'd be perfectly happy to see them come across the channel. That's where we are. And I think last year they intercepted about 35% of the boats. So that's about a third of those. And therefore, by definition, 2/3 weren't intercepted. There was a proposal, that I understand it, by the Home Secretary to have British boats intercept these small boats and return people to France, but the French don't want, understandably perhaps, British vessels in French territorial waters. So that's where matters rest at the moment.
What do you think the solution actually is? How can we get a grip on this?
Well, I have to say that we need to go back somehow to the arrangement we had when we were inside the European Union, the Dublin Agreement. The Dublin Agreement required, I think, much better cooperation between EU states. And it meant
it didn't always happen, though, Norman, did it?
It didn't always happen. No, of course it didn't happen. And it wasn't fully exercised, but nevertheless, the agreement was there. And what the agreement meant was that if somebody was refused asylum in a European Union country, and then they came to Britain, they could be returned immediately because they'd already had their application turned down. Whereas the position now is they can be refused in France or Belgium or somewhere and still come across here and have to be assessed. And that takes time and money. So we're losing out as a consequence of that.
Yes, we are losing out as a consequence of that. I wonder, from your perspective, I mean, there are lots of people, including Reform UK, including the Conservatives, who see at least some form of advance would be made by withdrawing from the European Convention on Human Rights. I presume you're against that.
Well, I'm against it for a whole range of reasons, not least of all the European Convention on Human Rights protects British people against the excesses of our own government sometimes, and it's important not to lose that.
We're not going to lose all those rights, though, are we?
Well, we could do. It depends what replaced them. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that I think it's a bit of a red herring, to be honest, Peter. I don't think that would actually solve the problem in any shape or form.
We also were in a situation where, you know, the democratic will of the people was to Brexit. We have Brexited. Yes. And since the Dublin Agreement has not been part of our law, or not been part of the practicalities, we've had, some people call it the Boris wave. I mean, who do you hold responsible for the high level of immigration, both legal and illegal?
Well, I mean, it goes back to Tony Blair originally, who took a very relaxed view on matters in about 2003, 2004. It's also been the case that within government, and including the government I served in, there were those in the Home Office who particularly wanted to clamp down on people coming into the country, and those who saw the advantages of immigration for, say, the economy and the health service. And there was a tension within government in my day, and I'm sure there is now, between different departments who've got different priorities. So there's never been a solid government position, I think, on this across the board. Certainly the Boris wave didn't help, and I think the message has gone out. I think now that here is a mechanism to get people into the country. There was a very interesting piece, I have to say, on BBC the other day, which was involved, I think it was BBC World Service, about this people coming from Iran, women coming from Iran, who wanted to get out of the country because they're Christians, and they didn't know where they were going. They got taken to a people smuggler. They had no idea where they were going until they ended up in Dover. So they hadn't actually chosen the UK. But that's where the smugglers had taken them.
Very interesting to talk to you and get your perspective on that. Thank you, Norman Becker, former Home Office Minister. Appreciate you joining us this evening. On the euthanasia story, Harry's been in touch from Sheffield. Harry, thanks for giving me a ring on 0344 499 1000. What would you like to say?
What can you say? What on earth can you say?
Well, what do you think of this story?
I was physically sick, nearly. I had to go in the bedroom and sit with the wife. I've got an autistic grandson. I've got a grandson with ADHD, whatever you call it.
ADHD, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
This has distressed you, Harry. I don't want to keep you on the air if you are distressed. Are you okay to talk?
No, I want the people to listen to this.
Go ahead, Harry.
Right, I really do. Right. Where was the love and the care for this young man? Where were the people who could cuddle him when he's down, hold him when he's stressed, make sure he's okay? And that's what life's about. We've got to look after each other. Where were the people to give this man, if he's a 16, 17 year, call him man, loving and caring, hug him and keep him tight? Oh, it makes me so upset. You do that for anybody. You do that to anybody. Where were the parents? Why can a doctor turn around and say, yeah, well, I agree with this. This is a human being. It's not a dog in a vet or stuff like that. I hate saying that, but...
No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Do you know what I mean? It's
Harry, tell me about your grandson and his needs and what happens with him and how you help him.
Well, he just gets... like things trigger him. Do you understand? Like, he gets triggered.
What sort of things?
Oh, it could be anything. It could be one thing one day and one thing the next. But all you do is you get him close, you put your arm around him, you sit his backside down, and you talk, and you change the subject.
And how does he react when you say he's triggered? What does he actually do?
He just gets like really
loud and
yeah. But if you sit him down, it takes a while to get him sit down. I tell you that. Like, but when you get him sat,
so he's hyperactive, is he?
Yeah. You put your arm around him, and you talk to him, and you ask him what's the matter. And he might say something, and then you just change the subject. You change the subject and you get it onto something different. And he calms down, and you put your arm around him tighter, and you give him a cuddle and a hug, and you ask him if he's all right, and he turn around and say, yeah, of course I am. And this is what this kid needed. This is what this kid needed. There's loads of kids out there, right, are suffering with the same thing on all the need. I know the parents do care, but at specific times, you've got to, when you realise what's going to trigger them, and then again the next day it might be something else.
Yes.
But you can see when they change, so you need to sit them, hug them. Well, not just hug them, put your arm
actually hold them. Hold them. How often do you look after them, Harry?
I can feel you with them.
Yes.
And they know that you are basically maybe feeling the same, because you're anxious yourself.
Of course. Is it scary, Harry?
Yourself.
Is it scary?
But, of course it's scary. But that, do you know what it is, that arm round? We've all had, it's like the comfort and the cuddle. It's like the comfort, do you understand?
Yes.
It's when you feel ill. When you were young, you feel ill, your mum got over here and put your arm around you.
Yes.
Do you know, it's that type of thing.
How old is your grandson? How old is your grandson, Harry?
11.
And has he always been like this from he was a baby?
No, about I'd say about Yeah, 6-year-old, something like that. When he first started going to school.
So you've been dealing with this for 5 years. How often do you look after him? How often do you see him?
When he was a baba, all the time. I've got one now. I have him tomorrow, and I've had him since he was 3-month-old.
Right.
And he's 4 now.
But your grandson, who's 11, how often do you see him?
It's just occasional now because we've moved a little bit further away.
Yeah, but when you see him, these things can happen very, very quickly, and things can get scary quickly.
Yeah, they just change. They just change. It's like you wouldn't believe how quick it can change. Actually,
you clearly love him.
Like one minute,
yes,
sat there, and the next minute it's boom. So you've got
Harry. It's a very difficult.
On top of it all the time.
Yeah, it's a very difficult life your grandson lives, isn't it? And it's a difficult life you and his parents live as well when they're looking after him.
Yeah.
How important is it, and how big an adjustment has it been to have to cope with it?
Well, the parent-wise, like I say, I don't see him that regular now, but when I do, I know I can see trigger signs. I don't know what it is, but because I had him when he was younger, I can see like trigger signs. I don't know why I can't. But his parents basically, they're not on edge all the time. They've got to be careful what they do and things like that.
It's a lot to deal with, Harry. It's a lot to deal with. And listen, you're showing your love to your grandson. You're showing your love to your family on so many occasions, and you're showing your compassion and your love by giving me a ring and telling us about that as well.
Do you know, Peter, I just can't understand, where was the love for this young man?
Yeah.
Where was the love for this young man? Where was the arm around him? Where was the cuddles when he needed it? Where was someone to say to me, you're okay, I'm with you, I've got you, I'm cuddling you in, you're my love. Where was that?
Harry, listen, thank you very, very much indeed for giving me a ring from Sheffield. You've spoken really honestly and openly about that and caring for his 11-year-old grandson who has clearly big issues in his life. And I know that 11-year-old is very much loved by Harry and by his family. So thank you for that call. Real privilege to listen to you, Harry, and keep doing exactly what you're doing. And keep that level of compassion, because we all need a hug sometimes. We're going to talk about Iran in just a second. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
What a call. My goodness. Really, really affected me. Definitely interesting and humbling, actually, and part of the job and part of the thing I love about this job is that you do get to speak to all sorts of people about all sorts of things. You know, I'm going in my working life from someone who's caring for their autistic grandson to someone who's a former Pentagon official, an ex-US Navy officer. We're going to speak to Mike Hewitt in a second. We're also going to get your views on lots of things. Lots of people want to talk about benefits, and we will get to those calls, text, tweets and voice notes. Keep them coming in. 0344 499 1000. Let's just remind ourselves about those efforts to get a ceasefire, about dealing with our allies in Saudi Arabia, for example, what the Prime Minister has been saying earlier on today in Saudi Arabia.
I think the mood is very much one of shock that they were attacked in the first place, because of course they weren't attacking Iran, and the intensity of some of the attacks. Relief that there's now a ceasefire. I think a general sense that it's fragile, that there's work to do in relation to it, and then a lot of reflection and discussion, me with them, about the work we did over the last 6 to 7 weeks together in collective self-defence, the capabilities, and an opportunity, frankly, for me to say thank you to our personnel who are out here, who've been, many of the pilots been working from about 2 hours after the conflict started. So moving forward, but I'm very clear that one is very important. We stand with our long-standing allies and be here showing our support for them, reflecting on the work we're doing together, and for them a sense that we're a friend that's come at this time to have these really important discussions with them and to make sure this ceasefire is a permanent ceasefire and that the Strait of Hormuz is open, and that takes more than just words, it takes a lot of action.
The Prime Minister speaking to Sky News a little bit earlier on, he's been criticised by the leader of the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch, for being all mouth and no trousers. Well, John Healey, who is the Defence Secretary, was talking today as well about Russian submarines in our waters. This is what the Defence Secretary said at Downing Street today.
In the last few weeks, while the eyes of many were trained on the Middle East, the UK, in partnership with Norway and other allies, have responded to increased Russian activity in the Atlantic north of the UK. This operation involved a Russian Akula-class attack submarine and a concurrent deployment of 2 specialist submarines from Gugi. That's Russia's main directorate for deep-sea research. And last November I outlined how these Gugi units, including the spy ship Yantar, are vessels directed by President Putin to conduct hybrid warfare activities against the UK and our allies, specifically around critical undersea infrastructure. And for the first time today, we're releasing images of the Gugi base and of these vessels. They're designed to survey underwater infrastructure during peacetime and sabotage it in conflict.
John Healey also had a message for Vladimir Putin.
And to President Putin I say, we see you, we see your activity over our cables and our pipelines, and you should know that any attempt to damage them will not be tolerated and will have serious consequences.
There's a heck of a lot happening in defence matters at the moment. We've got war in Iran. Is there a ceasefire? Is there not? We'll get into that in a second with Rear Admiral Mike Hewitt, former Pentagon official and ex-US Navy officer, served for over 3 decades. We'll talk about NATO and their allies and what's going on there. And just before we do that, I just want to give you a bit of an update. The Supreme Leader of Iran has said Tehran is not seeking war, but that his country will not forfeit its rights. In a statement on Iranian state TV today, Mojtaba Khamenei said Iran will seek retribution for attacks against Tehran and will take management of the Straits of Hormuz into a new phase. He also vowed to avenge the deaths of his father, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and Iran's quote-unquote martyrs. He said Iran considers all resistant fronts as a unified entity. He's not been seen in public since taking over the position from his father. Certainly when it comes to the tensions within NATO, Caroline Leavitt, who's the press secretary to Donald Trump, she was speaking about this yesterday. Let's just remind ourselves what she has said.
I have a direct quote from the President of the United States on NATO, and I will share it with all of you. They were tested and they failed. And I would add, it's quite sad that NATO turned their backs on the American people over the course of the last 6 weeks when it's the American people who have been funding their defense. As you know, President Trump will be meeting with Secretary Rutte in a couple of hours here at the White House, and I know he looks forward to having a very frank and candid conversation with him.
And that frank conversation did happen, none of it on camera, but certainly we know that there are many, many tensions there. To make sense of all of this, I'm delighted that Rear Admiral Mike Hewitt, former Pentagon official, former US Navy officer who served for over 3 decades, is with me now. Mike, thank you for joining me again on the Evening Exchange. I really appreciate your time. Where are we?
As you said, Peter, this is a very complex strategic set of issues. The campaign in Iran militarily has been won by the United States. I unfortunately don't trust the Iranians in this negotiation or this ceasefire. I think it's biding time. This is what the Iranians have done for 47 years. So I have very little faith and confidence that there will be a settlement or a negotiation in the next 2 weeks. That being said, the one person I would trust in ensuring that if we have to go back to conflict, we do so with a clear end state is President Trump. And so militarily, we have defeated the Iranians.
How? What does America actually want?
Well, first and foremost, and most importantly, the end state was Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That is really the fundamental reason for this conflict. Now what we're dealing with is a belligerent country that is taken hostage to international waterways. That is a world issue. That is not a U.S. issue. Ultimately, at the end of this negotiation, the one thing that we have in our benefit is Karg Island, which is the choke point of all Iranian commerce. So if we have to, I imagine the president has a plan to take that island, not to destroy it, but to hold it until we can get to a settlement that all sides can agree to.
But surely that by itself, Mike, would be an aggressive act. Surely the Iranians won't welcome that, and they would see that in whenever it happens as an aggressive act. And also, I mean, they may well get assurances or international inspectors talking about Iran's nuclear facilities, but how has that moved the Americans actually on further from where you were 41 days ago?
What we need to do is open the straits. What the Iranians
But they were open 41 days ago.
But they also were on the precipice of a nuclear weapon. And so we have to understand the reason for this conflict was to remove Iran's ability to project power through terrorism, to stop funding the proxy networks, and to eliminate their nuclear weapons program. We gave Iran every chance to agree, even offering them a free civil nuclear program if they would give up their weapons ambitions, and they refused to do so.
But again, Mike, I ask you, in what way has there been a military victory? Because none of that has been achieved.
Their nuclear weapons program has been destroyed. The only thing
Didn't that happen in the summer? I mean, we were told by President Trump that happened in the summer.
We took out their enrichment capacity. We took out some of their physics packages and their ability to launch certain nuclear weapons. But they went right back to rebuilding that enrichment capacity, which is the key to developing highly enriched uranium.
So if they can do that within 6 months, what's to say that they won't set up a nice agreement, everything's all marvellous, 2 weeks' time, everyone smiles, handshakes, isn't it all wonderful in Islamabad, and then they do exactly the same thing again?
That's precisely the point. The president won't let that happen. The only way that this comes to a resolution on the nuclear front is that they agree to not enrich uranium. They agree to unlimited inspections by U.S. inspectors, not the IAEA. And again, this regime is empowered by conflict, chaos, and terrorism. So you're not going to get them to come off of that. Our victory here is eliminating the nuclear weapons program and holding them to account for international terrorism in the Straits of Hormuz.
Do you honestly believe that the new Ayatollah is going to say, yes, US weapons inspectors, in you come, inspect everything we have, because that is the price of peace?
I don't think he's going to agree to that. This is ultimately my frustration with the ceasefire, but I understand the president's intentions. If he thinks he can get to a peaceful resolution, he's going to give that every attempt possible. I don't think it's going to work. So we're going to be right back where we were 4 days ago, where I believe we take Karg Island, we take out the rest of their ballistic missile program, and then the international community needs to step in and open the straits.
But if you're, sorry, Mike, I don't quite follow what you're saying. If you're talking about the need to take Karg Island and the need to take out ballistic missile capability, there has not been a military victory. What you said at the start of this interview and what President Trump is saying doesn't appear to be the case.
I believe the military victory of taking out their Navy, taking out their Air Force so they can't project power or push terrorism, and then eliminating their nuclear weapons capacity is victory, and I believe we are there. Where we are not achieved our goals is the mullah's reaction by closing down the Straits of Hormuz. That is really not a U.S. issue. The U.S. doesn't need Middle East oil, but the U.S. would certainly like the international community to hold to account any country that violates international norms, and that is certainly what the Iranians are doing right now.
Tell me your assessment of the threat from Russia to the UK, given we know that these submarines have been in our waters here in the UK.
Well, having grown up doing anti-submarine warfare in the Cold War, right alongside the RAF, and during the Reagan-Thatcher era, where we knew where every Soviet submarine was from the moment it left port until the moment it returned, and we would kill it if we had to. We have to return to that. Unfortunately, I think the rhetoric of the MOD or the rhetoric from the Prime Minister doesn't match the deeds that they are doing. You look at, and again, I want to paint a picture of NATO and the US's relationship as fragile, enduring, but fragile. And this isn't just about Iran. This is about many of the failed decisions of NATO over the last 5 years, including the rhetoric around stopping Putin's invasion of Ukraine, yet not resourcing victory. And Trump is very unhappy about that. And then the GDP issue of going to 5%. He's been very frustrated by that. But most recently, his frustration was not that NATO didn't help us in Iran, was that they hindered us in our mission in Iran.
How do you think NATO, or how does the president think NATO hindered the United States efforts in Iran? I mean, not helping, of course, is one way to hinder, but was it active hindering?
Active hindering. They wouldn't let us fly out of Diego Garcia. They wouldn't let us fly over French or Spanish airspace, which forced us to fly long, circuitous routes.
Italian airspace as well, yeah.
And Italian airspace. Yeah. So we didn't ask them to help us, but we certainly didn't expect them to hinder us.
Okay.
And that's an important issue. This is one of reliability and trustworthiness. We didn't ask the UK to participate in the war, but we asked them to allow us to base and use our bases that have been part of NATO for 70 years, and they refused to let us do that.
Okay.
That made it much more difficult for the United States.
Let me ask you one final question, Mike. Where do you think Keir Starmer figures in all of this? He is in the Saudi Arabia talking about ceasefires. We heard from him earlier on today. Is he in any sense a player in this, or is he just an afterthought when it comes to what America is doing?
I certainly believe he can become a player. Unfortunately, the words and the deeds will not match up. And as much rhetoric as we hear from the leader about a ceasefire and hoping it's a lasting ceasefire, I have no faith in that. Unfortunately, the UK military is so atrophied, they can't even stop Russian sanctioned oil from going through their waterways, let alone being able to forward deploy to the Straits of Hormuz to open up those straits. Unfortunately, the UK needs to take a serious self-assessment of its military capacity to do the things that the Prime Minister is saying he wants to do.
Mike, thank you. Always worth listening to you. Always worth listening to your analysis. Really appreciate you joining us on the programme. This Rear Admiral Mike Hewitt, former Pentagon official, ex-US Navy officer. He served for over 30 years. Really interesting what he was saying there. 0344 499 1000. We'll take calls right up to 10 o'clock when Ash and Andre are taking over. Stay with us here in the Evening Exchange.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Sinks, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
Raise the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Terry says Britain is safe from Russian subs. We have no navy to sink. MG from Staffordshire, talking about autistic euthanasia, says in this country this would never happen. I agree with Harry. He was the caller I spoke to about 20 minutes ago. Where were the parents? How could a doctor do this to a youngster with a neurological problem, probably not thinking straight? It is barbaric. As Harry said, people are not like animals in vets. I hope that Harry's grandson gets on okay. He is obviously really, really loved, which is fantastic, says MG. Cliff says this is the problem with entitled people, talking about benefits and talking about the story we talked a little bit earlier on in the programme about, had a big debate about an hour ago actually, about people who go to attractions like the Tower of London, places that are expensive to get into, and they're getting a big discount to do so because they're on universal credit. Cliff says, Cardi P, this is the problem with entitled people. I earn good money. I'd love to go on holidays or to sites in the UK and have but I have responsibility, so I don't. I love Marmite, but it's £5 a jar, so I don't buy it. Why do people think it's their right to have things? If I want a holiday, I work harder and longer hours. There's so many great things that are free to do here, so do them instead. I see so-called deprived kids wearing trainers that cost more than a trip to any attraction, and smoking, which costs more than a trip to the moon these days. Those that truly need help are being screwed by those that take and give nothing back to society, says Cliff. Let's hear a voice note from Robert on this as well.
I myself, I'm on disabled benefits because I've got quite a few health problems that I'm struggling with now. I've worked for 42 years as a registered nurse in the NHS, and I still, when I can, do some shifts too. Offering people discounts to go to the likes of the Tower of London, I think is a brilliant idea, because believe me, I could not afford to go and visit the Tower of London or London Zoo at the prices they are charging. I can barely survive on what I get. Hence, I have to force myself sometimes to go in and do a shift within the NHS, which one day kills me for days and days on end, just to make ends meet, because I'm not getting a lot of money.
Robert, thank you for that really interesting perspective. Let's get another one from Kerry in Coventry. Kerry, tell me your thoughts on this.
Evening, Peter.
Hello there. Hi.
I'm an employer. I run a small domiciliary care company in Coventry, and I have found it incredibly difficult to hire staff. And one of the things that I have picked up on is people are sitting on job seekers allowance, and then they go into the job centre showing I've applied for however many jobs. But when you offer them to come for an interview, or you offer them the position in and of itself, they generally don't pitch for the interview, don't return phone calls, don't rock up when they're supposed to, because even a slightly above average salary doesn't cover what they're getting on benefits. And nobody seems to talk about the job seekers allowance, which to my mind should possibly be capped for a certain amount of time instead of endlessly. I have no problem with my taxes that I pay, which it kills me to say are huge. To pay taxes for people who are disabled, for Faye, for example, with her child, I've got no problem contributing to those families. But I do have a problem with people who are offered positions and then choose not to show up for the interview or not to show up at all because they're living quite merrily on benefits.
So what happens, Kerry?
In my mind is insane.
What happens, Kerry, if you go back to... have you any redress? Can you go back to the job centre and say, look, I offered this person an interview, they said they applied for the job, they appeared to be qualified, we offered them an interview, didn't turn up for the interview. Is there any way that you can tell them that, or do they listen to you when you do?
There doesn't seem to be a way to check with them or to report back to them on how things went at the interview. There doesn't seem to be any follow-up from the job centre at all at the moment.
Yes.
Nobody comes back to you.
Did there used to be?
Not as far as I know.
Okay.
I don't think it's ever... I suppose when things were back in the paper and pen day, and you got your card with your, you need to attend this appointment for this interview.
But you would imagine, Kerry, would you not, with all the digitisation that's there, you would imagine that they could have a really easy system where they can say, or even just send you an email, an automated email, where you say, right, Kerry, this person is going for an interview. Did they turn up for the interview, yes or no? You do something really simple, not talking about filling in reams of forms. I'm talking about ticking something or replying to an email and say, yes, they turned up for the interview.
You would have thought so. You would have thought so, but there's nothing at the moment. I mean, I'm waiting for the Coventry Job Centre to phone me back in terms of using their facilities for interviews and things like that. So you would actually,
you could easily go to, or you're offering anyway, to go to the job centre, to interview people there, to get them into jobs. I mean, Kerry, if you put the other side of this on, if you think about you put yourself in the shoes of those people who are getting, not lots of money, but not lots of money less than they would necessarily if they were employed in one of your, I'm sure, very good jobs. Do you blame them?
I do, to a certain degree. But then I'm originally from South Africa, where benefits is not something that's never heard of. If you get a thing called unemployment insurance, which covers you for 6 months in a decreasing way. So the first month you get X, the next month you get less until you find work. So this whole idea that you can live endlessly on a job seeker's allowance just blows my mind to begin with. But I feel like there's something wrong in a society where people feel that they shouldn't have to work and that they're quite okay with somebody else footing the bill for them and their families to have a life, and now to go see attractions that I, as a business owner, small business mind you, but a business owner cannot afford to go to.
How do you feel about how the government's treating you? We've talked about the attractions issue, and I think that's a good issue to talk about. You've given us your opinion on that. But I mean, it sounds as if you're working very hard here. You've created employment here. You're trying to help people. Caring, really, really big thing that needs to happen. There are loads and loads of people who need carers. You're filling a gap in the market. You're finding it hard to even recruit, which I think is crazy, given how many people are unemployed. You would imagine, I'm not saying for a second that carers are, I hate this term, unskilled. They're not unskilled. There are lots of many skills, but you don't need a huge number of qualifications to actually do that job factually. Even though it's a really important job, and I would never be sniffy about carers. Carers looked after my grandmother really, really well for a long time. But you would imagine there would be people falling over themselves, and if things work properly, if the system worked properly, to say, Kerry, give me a job.
Exactly, especially when I'm offering them chances to upskill and to build themselves up into further careers in care. I'm not just offering them a dead-end job in care. I'm offering them above that. I'm offering them a pension. I'm offering them the leave, all the stocks and standard things that come with that. But to find employment, the only way I've found that I can potentially get people in the door is to have a visa sponsorship license, and I don't want to go that route. I really don't.
So hold on a second. So
I've tried everything.
This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy, Kerry. So you're saying that, and I totally believe you. You're saying there are loads of people in Coventry where you are who could do the jobs, who could come off unemployment, and could find a job with you. You're willing to go to the job centre and interview them there and say, "Come and work for me." And the only way you can get enough people into your business is by having visa sponsorship and bring people from abroad. I mean, that's crazy.
It is. It's been mind-blowing, and it's been very disheartening. I started this business. I worked for myself for the last 4.5 years. I brought my daughter on eventually. She works with me, and now it's just the two of us. We cannot find staff. For a 20-hour-a-week contract, I can't find staff. For a 30-hour-a-week contract, I can't find staff. It is nigh on impossible.
That's
Nobody
mad.
wants this
That
job.
is mad.
And it's heartbreaking, because the other thing that I've been listening to is your euthanasia conversation, and I look after people specifically in palliative care, right at the end of life, so that they can die with dignity in their own homes. I love what I do. I absolutely love what I do, and giving these people their last wish is more than anything important to me.
Of course,
and I understand the euthanasia argument. However, I've also suffered with bipolar.
Okay.
So I understand that in my deepest, darkest motions, I probably would have taken that.
Kerry, I've got to go to another caller before we speak to Ash, but please give me a ring again, Kerry. Just before you go, where are you from in South Africa?
Originally from Johannesburg.
Ah, wonderful. I lived in Cape Town for 6 months on my gap year. Kerry, thank you very much. Ring me again, please, because we've more to talk about on all those issues. That's Kerry in Coventry. Great caller. Lots to say there. Let's get a quick word from Sid in Glasgow. What are your thoughts, Sid? You're very welcome to the programme.
How are you doing, Peter?
Very well, thank you. How are you, Sid?
I'm very good. What it is, Sid, this underwater submarine, the Russian submarine. So what did we do about it?
Well, we said there can be consequences, Vladimir. We see you. Watch out. John Healy's on your case.
And we didn't do anything about it.
No, we didn't. No, we simply said, we know you're there, and it's not very nice.
Have they just seen something on us that we've not got?
Well, defences, I think. You know, there's a lot that I think he's seen that our resources are stretched and thought, well, we can do whatever you like here. We can go into UK waters. It doesn't really fill me with a huge level of confidence when you have the Defence Secretary saying, ooh, you're a naughty boy, don't do it again. And
the reason I phoned you, because I thought you would have an answer.
I don't. I really don't, Sid. I don't. And I think we're still searching for answers and all of that. Sid, thank you. That's Sid in Glasgow there. Thanks to the texter as well. He says, I do think it is good that OAPs have discounts just about everywhere, but everyone else on benefits, no. Certain shower gels used to give a free ticket officer in the bottle. They're a good idea. I think newspapers should have vouchers in them to promote sales, promote reading, and help people who might be on a lower income. Well, thank you for that. Ash is with me. Hello, sir.
Hi, man. How's the show been? Has it been good?
It's been good. It's been good. What's coming up in yours?
Sharon Davis, she's coming on to talk about a trans, is it darts player, which isn't fair, really, is it? Because men have better, for hunting and spatial awareness, I think man does have a better eyesight. Women are obviously better at, you know, looking around the side to see if the kids are running off and going to get eaten by a lion. So it's all natural involved. We've got Rear Admiral Chris Parry talking about, well, you know, talking about how the